Hello everybody and welcome to Elevate Exchange Community. For those of you who have not met before, my name's Ilona Alcock and I'm a director here at Elevate. You will be joined on stage later on today by my colleagues Katie and Catherine, and we're all just so excited to be able to pull this event together. As you may know, Elevate's three key pillars are innovation, sustainability and community. We ran events over the summer on innovation and sustainability and been absolutely delighted with the response that we've had. But I think it's fair to say that community is the one that gets closest to the heart of Elevate. It is all about the people and places that make this a place that we want to live, that we want to work, that showcases the very best of our region. I'm so grateful to our sponsors, Bruntwood Works, for providing this beautiful space in block and for all of the support they've given Elevate since we launched. Also supported by Mel Hill, who does all of our wonderful branding, and literally anything you see from Elevate that looks good, that is absolutely down to Mel. Without the support of people like Bruntwood Works, we would not be able to put these events on free of charge. All of our speakers today have given up their time for us. We have given up our time to pull this event together because we absolutely believe that having these conversations and making them as accessible as possible is the way that we'll see the change and support that we need to see in our region. We would love to hear from you over the next few hours, so please do engage with each other in the chat. Let us know what you think of what we're discussing. Please feel free to share any links there with projects that you might be involved in. Our speakers have got a lot of information to share today, so where possible we will stay on top of that and direct you to extra information as we go. Please do also join the conversation on our social channels. We're at ElevateGM on Twitter and at Elevate_North on Insta. That is enough from me for now, and I'm delighted that our very first speaker is Kate Vokes from Bruntwood. She is their non-exec director and also the chair of the Oglesby Charitable Trust. The work that they do is absolutely phenomenal. The commitment that they have, not just to being a great business and a great employer, but to really making sure that the communities they work in benefit from having them being there, is really inspiring, and one of the reasons why Elevate is so proud to be able to support their programmes. I'm going to pass over now to Kate, who's going to give you just a small selection of the work that they do.
As a business at Bruntwood, we have a very clear purpose of creating thriving cities, and for us that's something that has been around since the beginning, since 1976 when the business was established. We haven't always articulated it quite as well as that, or quite as clearly as that. And in preparing for this, I started reading through some old annual reviews just to see how we did used to talk about it. And going back, I'm not going to take it back to the beginning, but just going back to 2001, this is when we're presenting our financial numbers. We're also talking about, how the success of our company is inextricably linked to the success of the region in which we operate. So we knew that this is something that's really, really important to us for a long time. And in 2008, 2008 was in the midst of the recession. We were still supporting communities and supporting our colleagues because we recognised that more than ever it was really important not to pull our support away from communities. The plan though today is really just to talk through some of the things that we've done to hopefully encourage and inspire others to get involved more with their communities and cities. And for us, it's really both about the business, but ultimately we're all individuals and we all have a role to play as individuals as well as collectively within our businesses. And whilst the influence of our business spreads much wider than GM, I am going to focus on Greater Manchester examples today, which is, I don't know, there's still loads of examples from GM, so it didn't feel like it was restricting us too much. But we know as a business that all of the impacts that we have both a positive and negative social impact on the world around us, and I'm really proud to say over the last 40 odd years that as a business we've made massive positive contributions to our communities, and that's through colleagues, customers and our broader communities. We've tried, not always successfully, but we've tried to pull them into sort of 3 key areas that we support, because we know that a truly thriving city for us is one that's sustainable, one that's fair, and one that's culturally vibrant. And a city like Manchester to be proud of with its innovation, diversity and sense of community. It gives us a reason to get up in the morning to enrich communities and not feeling like you're doing harm to society. But for us, we know that it's helped us build a really long-term sustainable business with really good retention levels for our customers and our employers, and good employee engagement. And we have a really good, strong brand and reputation on the back of it too. So it does make good business sense, as well as just feeling like the right thing to do. And there are many ways, so this is kind of what we do, but there are many ways that we as a business can support, and the different roles that we can play. So we know we have a key role as a property company, as a developer. So in the schemes that we're doing, the placemaking, and overall the responsibility that we have in terms of the city's overall sort of eco system, and the relationship that we have with our suppliers, and the construction process that we go through when we're redesigning buildings. We also have a relationship, as I say, with our suppliers and our customers, and this is another opportunity for us to have an impact. And significantly through our employees. We're a really big employer, and we provide people with brilliant place to work, really good purposeful jobs, growth opportunities, and a sort of future talent pool for the city. And then significantly, another role that we have is as a supporter of the cities and communities in which we work. So, as I say, my plan is to try and explain a little bit as a business about some of the examples. And when we try to do this in a business, we realise that it's can be quite overwhelming for people. So we've built. I'm not going to talk through it in detail, but we put together quite a simple framework for our teams to work within, the purpose framework that puts together both the what and the how to try and organise our priorities, and then also for us to be able to try and measure the impact of what we do. It can be really hard to measure. It's really easy to measure the investment and the money and the time that you're putting into things. It's really hard to measure some of the outputs of it as well. So we're trying to use this framework as a way and a mechanism for us as a business to help organise some of the priorities and give the people in the business more ownership for some of the projects and the work that we're doing as well. The other reason that we as a business and a group of people have the opportunity to be really impactful is because of the role that we have with the Oglesby Charitable Trust. 20 years ago, my parents set the Oglesby Charitable Trust up it was earlier than 20 years actually, but they really started becoming more active 20 years ago. But set it up on the kitchen table. It really was a kitchen table charity. And this is money that comes from the business, that's generated, profits that are generated from the business that go into the trust to then allow us to be able to give more philanthropically back into the cities. So it kind of allows us to work with problems, issues, challenges that are a bit further back. So getting to the root causes of problems and issues that perhaps the business might find harder to justify getting involved with. So it allows us to help make some step changes with some of those deep-rooted causes. The Trust has a vision for a community that is healthy, creative and self-sustaining, in which all members can participate fully. And its focus is really similar. We articulate it slightly differently, but the focus area for the Trust is really similar to the business, apart from the addition of medical research in there as well. We've given over 25 million pounds, and at the moment are giving about 3 million a year. So it started off giving smaller amounts, and that's ramped up more recently. So significant amount of money, significant amount of influence and responsibility we feel actually for the the activities that we do, and the ability for us to make changes within our city. The other thing that we do with the Trust is try and work collaboratively with the business as well, because there are many opportunities where the business sector, working with the charity sector and working with education and the public sector, can make a massive difference as long as we all understand the roles that each of us are playing within that process. So what I'm going to do now is just try and go through some examples of some of those areas of support, just to bring to life, I suppose, some of the things that we've been doing. So, starting with sustainability. As a business, we have arguably too many projects, and we would just, everybody was just rushing around doing all sorts of crazy initiatives. And actually, again, we've sort of tried to focus and prioritise just to get some clarity and to be able to actually make significant impact in this area. So there are many ways that we can support. Significantly, actually, I think at the beginning is actually coming up with targets and reporting mechanisms on these things. And we were the first property company to sign up to the net carbon future by 2030 with the UK Building Council. Optimistic target for us, and I think that the critical thing at the beginning is actually understanding what we are able to measure and what we are able to report on as well. But all sorts of different ways as a business that we can work towards helping support the sustainable goals, both for us and for our city and for our country and wider. So I'm just going to talk about this building actually that I'm sitting in now, or that we're sitting in, block, because for us this redevelopment had sustainability at the heart of it. And for us it's mostly we do redevelop buildings, which in itself is brilliant because we're recycling buildings, but actually practically it does make it harder to retrofit sustainable solutions into older buildings than if you're starting with a new build. But hopefully those of us that are in the room today may have noticed the fabulous green wall as you approached the building, which not only looks beautiful, but actually it's Manchester's first hivert living wall, and is made of, if we were in a live event now, I'd be asking people to guess how many plants make up that wall, but there's 18,000 plants created. This wall was created by our friends at I Want Plants, in partnership with Manchester Met University as well. And as well as looking beautiful, it also has sensors in it that monitor the biodiversity and record how much the wall is absorbing gas. So again, going back to that point about measuring. And then moving inside the building, we've installed systems to optimise air quality. There are sensors that inform space utilisation, and also a building management system that supports the efficient use of energy within the building. And inside there's a focus on biophilia as well, which is known to improve wellbeing when you're inside spaces together, and obviously sustainability as well. And the installation of an innovative 2-storey living wall that both provides oxygen and, interestingly, also helps to reduce noise levels as well. So again, impacting on that in the environment. I'm going to move to the rooftop now, and I'm going to let somebody else explain the science behind the fabulous blue-green roof that we've got up there.
So today it's a really busy day today. We're laying the wildflower mats that's been grown at a site in Sheffield, and this has been cultivated for about 12 months, and it arrived today on a pallet, and we've got it on the roof as quickly as possible. It's a very hot sunny day today, so we're laying it on top of a layer of substrate which we've specially selected and laid last week, and then we're watering it in to make sure that the wildflower gets established nice and quickly. A blue-green roof like this can also help improve the biodiversity of the area, where before there was nothing, we've now created a meadow in essence in the middle of the city, and this is going to help pollinators, bees, butterflies, even birds actually have a small habitat where they can go get food, maybe even nest.
So why the Polysync system is so smart is the fact that this level data feeds straight into the Kirsty cloud. This live sensor data is then connected to the weather data. This is then fed into an optimization, and in that optimization we're working out how much water should be in this tank based off the rules set. We want to capture any kind of heavy rainfall events, hold that water up and basically reuse it when we get droughts.
We have to work out our calculations so that the water discharges ahead of the storm, which is different to every other project, which generally discharges at the same time as the storm or after the storm. So the idea would be that the smart system, this roof will be empty when the storm comes and has that capacity to take the storm without any discharge, which is reversing the current method of design.
Just a short video, and helpfully it's raining today, so it shows the importance of installing things like this. But what it also demonstrates is that we can't do this on our own. We are certainly not experts in this, so we need to work in partnership with other people, and it's a really important part of the way that we work at Bruntwood in collaboration. So here are just some of the current partners that we're working with on some of our sustainability projects. And one of these, Manchester City of Trees, is a movement that was instigated by the Oglesby Charitable Trust and Community Forest Trust, planting and restoring woodlands, with this fabulous ambition of planting 3 million trees, one for every man, woman and child across Greater Manchester within a generation. So working together both with communities, with businesses and organisations to collectively build a city of trees. In addition, Bruntwood also work with City of Trees on their deep expertise on urban planting. You can just plonk a tree anywhere, but it costs quite a lot of money to do that, and there's a reasonable chance that it might fail. So working with experts like City of Trees to help us plan which are the right trees to plant in the right places when we're doing some of our development to really enhance the overall environment. City of Trees also, just going back to measurement, have done this really lovely project in Salford in 2015, where they planted trees in specially designed pavements in some streets in Salford, capturing the impact that the trees had on both clearing polluted water and cleaning it and putting it back into the system from surface runoff. But then also managing those levels and measuring them, which really important part of managing our flood defences in what is, as we know, a wet city. You can tell I'm quite interested in some of this science stuff. But through the trust, we've also supported some potentially not so sexy projects like building a car park. This car park up at Smithills estate in North Manchester helps allow people to access green spaces that wouldn't necessarily normally be able to access. And one of the things that happens now from this spot is that people come through the City of Trees and doing dementia walks, so people just coming and using it as a way to help improve their health and well-being. Another project in terms of accessing space is, hopefully a number of you will recognise this fantastic iconic Great Ridge in the Peak District. We supported a project, Mendar Mountains, the walk, very, very popular walk, getting completely eroded and damaging the path, so helping restore the pathwork, helping us educate people on how to protect the world that they're going out and enjoying, so that this sort of walk will be there for generations to come. That's just a sample of some of our sustainability projects, and often actually our categories, as I said before, are not necessarily particularly clear. And this project here, Growing Together Levenshulme, is a really lovely example of where there are multiple benefits of some of the projects that we work on. So this is both supporting sustainability of people growing local produce, but is also about helping support marginalised communities. So it's a set of allotments in South Manchester that offer weekly therapeutic horticultural sessions to refugees and people seeking asylum. So it provides a support network for them, it supplies that vital community as well as growing skills and helping them produce some local produce. So transitioning then on to that next category for us, which is a fair society. And a key element of this for us is about raising the aspirations and the skills of the diverse talent pool for us and our customers and suppliers and the community more broadly within the city, to ensure that we've all got that rich talent pool of people coming through to help our businesses survive. Through partnerships such as Uprising, who give pathways to leadership for young people who wouldn't normally have those clear pathways and clear mentors in life. Or developing thriving and diverse digital communities with partners such as North Coders, whose lovely vision is built by people who love tech and believe we're stronger when everyone is included. And Innovate Her, who more specifically focus on girls with their vision to get girls ready for the tech industry and the industry ready for girls. I think that's a really important point, is that we can do what we can do to get people ready, but we need to make sure that the environments in which they're landing are going to be inclusive environments and that are ready for people coming in from different places. We've had a really long relationship starting in 2004 with Bolton Lads and Girls Club, that then evolved into a relationship with Onside, who were then rolling out youth clubs across our region and now actually latterly, but really raising aspirations of Manchester's young people, particularly in areas of deprivation. We've since 2004 and that relationship with Bolton, we've donated over £1 million as a business and a trust to Bolton and the Onside network. And these places are brilliant, beautiful spaces that provide somewhere to go, something to do and someone to talk to when schools are closed specifically. A couple of weeks ago I went to Hideout, which is in Gorton. They've just celebrated their 1 year anniversary, and next year Manchester Youth Zone in Harper Hay is just about to celebrate its 10th year anniversary. And our relationship with them goes much deeper than just the money. I've sat on the board at Manchester Youth Zone, chaired the board for a number of years. Colleagues of mine now sit on the board as trustees. There are loads of volunteering opportunities, career mentoring. We've had young people selling products at Afflex as part of an enterprise programme with us. Loads of ways of helping support these young people in giving them some opportunities and some inspiration. But we don't just support young people. There are other marginalised groups in society that we support as well. So Safety for Sisters, a lovely small charity who work with migrant women across the northwest, women who've experienced gender-based violence and who have no recourse to public funds or state benefits. We've had a long history of working with Mustard Tree, the charity in Ancoats that are working on poverty and homelessness. And again, both that money coming from the Oglesby Charitable Trust and skills and expertise and connections coming through from the business. In terms of Fair Society, as many of you will know, this region particularly, but across the country, there are real problems with health disparity. Recent research shows that the rich are living for a decade longer than the poor. We get 10 years longer of life than those that are living in poverty. The Oglesby Charitable Trust did some research in 2015 and then followed up by establishing the Shared Health Foundation, and its mission is really to help tackle complex health and social care issues. We kind of use it as a bit of a test bed to try things that perhaps aren't being tried in the NHS, or work on specific issues, with then the hope that they will get rolled out. And not all of them, obviously, because that's the whole point of trying things. That some things fail, but it's really using the knowledge and the skills that we've got and the relationships. So one of the projects that we've been working on is trying to change the system behind B&B standards for homeless families. People talk about homelessness, but very few people talk about the cohort of homeless families. So Shared Health Foundation have been coming up with this gold standard for what B&Bs look like for families. They've also been working on much needed resilience for young people, packaging things up that are then able to be used by people like the youth zones to be able to work with their young people. Or we've been working with communities on child health as well, particularly young mothers who don't necessarily have the same support around networks around them on child health. So moving on and segueing, some of our projects, that crossover. We've had a long relationship with Manchester Pride. They've been based in one of our buildings overlooking Canal Street for a number of years. And again, this is a lovely example of where arts and culture can play their part in shining a light on some of the places where society's inequitable. So I'll then move on to talking about the final area, culturally rich, vibrant cities. And evidence shows that culture and the arts does add significant economic value to a region. But much more than that, it does attract talent and it attracts people to come and want to live and work within cities. It stimulates creativity and innovation, and it just does make better places to places that we all want to be. And according to Time Out recently, Manchester was announced as the third best city to live in, and citing both community and culture as being part of a significant reason as to why that's the case. And I feel really, really proud of the business for the contribution that we've played in making this city and region vibrant. And there are many examples of it around the city physically in some of the capital projects and the buildings that we've supported, the restoration of those, whether that's Chewton School of Music, the Manchester Museum, or the fabulous redevelopment of Halle St Peter's Church in Cutting Room Square in Ancoats, which my father was instrumental in encouraging them to do it, and then helping them both with practical advice and cash to enable it to happen. And anybody that's been up there will see the transformation of that area, which has certainly been helped by the redevelopment of that beautiful church. But in addition to that, we do use the site of our buildings as big art galleries and canvases. The one in the left is a lovely project on Trafford House. So anybody that drives down the road out of town, Vanessa produced this brilliant piece of art with the local community. The one in the middle is a really recent piece of artwork on Faulkner House in the city. And then the one on the right, it depends which way you're looking at this, but on my right is a lovely light installation that we can use in many different ways to help transform the cityscape. We've also filled the city full of art. Anya Galaccio's beautiful tree at the Whitworth Art Gallery, a tree had died. She didn't want to lose it, so she created this beautiful steel tree that the Oglesby Charitable Trust contributed to. We've supported the cow parade many years ago. When the cow parade was in the city, I have one of the cows in my garden. And we supported Bee in the city recently. There was this lovely art trail to work to try and encourage people to explore our fabulous city and allow artists to express themselves on the Bee as well at the same time. We could probably do an art trail ourselves, actually, if I think about all of the different things that we've done as a business. But we also try to encourage as many people as possible to get involved in art, and have supported Home's fabulous Manchester Open exhibition, which I am very gratefully part of the judging process at the moment, and feel very ill-equipped to be choosing the artwork that's going to be shown on the walls of Home's beautiful exhibition space next year. But it's a really inclusive project where they go out and they work with community groups to try and encourage as many people, both professional artists and people who just use art as therapy or as just something that they do as a hobby. We also have, this summer we helped provide the stages for young emerging talent at Home Ground outside Home, and also in St Helens Square in the city. So we had young people from the Contact Theatre, young people from Hideout performing across the city, and this was all part of the city's campaign to help bring back and revitalise the city post-pandemic. We use art to educate and stimulate conversation. This project's a really lovely project, started in 2016 with the Lowry Theatre and Salford Young Carers Service. They commissioned a new piece of theatre with a theatre company called Lung, and it shines a light on the stories of the untold stories of young carers. These young carers are people who we want to be in our workforce in the city. We need to build their resilience up. We need them to be able to grow and develop into strong members of our society. This was such a lovely successful project initially that we're now helping support them roll it out so that more audiences are getting to see these untold stories. Another brilliant festival within our city is the Sick Festival, which helps face up to the complexities of mental and physical health in many different ways. It brings together a really fabulous international arts programme, bringing together the perspectives of researchers, clinical practitioners, public health professionals, charities, and those of lived experience. So the process of developing the work is really, really important, as well as sharing the stories with those of us that don't necessarily connect with them that often. They live at Manchester Science Park, which is one of our fabulous communities, but it's right in the heart of where these clinicians and these educators are, so that they're able to build those really strong, deep relationships with those people. And the last, it doesn't sound very cheery, does it? But the last piece of work that we supported with the Oglesby Charitable Trust was a lovely collaborative work with the hospital and the university called A Death and Birth in My Life, which was a really beautiful, challenging piece, working with the nurses and the doctors in the hospital, talking about end of life, and actually it's quite a complex situation now with the way that we do prolong people because of the developments of medical science, that we do prolong people's lives perhaps longer than we always should. And it's really interesting understanding the medical perspective of that how it affects the doctors and the nurses, something that, you know, we don't necessarily, unless you are a doctor or a nurse or you have close relationships with them, it's not necessarily a perspective that you would necessarily think of. So some really interesting, I mean, if you have a look on their website, they've got some really bonkers, which I won't share with you now, but some really interesting sort of bonkers projects that they've done historically, but really thought-provoking. We've also got further blending of art and science with our support of the Blue Dot Festival, that's obviously sadly not been able to happen in the last couple of years because of the pandemic, but historically was just such a really brilliant way of bringing our science community of customers together in a really playful way, so people were allowed to build relationships and have conversations in a way that was stimulated through other ways. One partnership that we're really proud of is our relationship with the Royal Exchange Theatre, and I know that you're going to hear from the fabulous Roy later on, but I can't talk about community and arts and culture without talking about this relationship, which has been really special for us. And we've got this three-way partnership between the Royal Exchange, Bruntwood and the Oglesby Charitable Trust. The Bruntwood Prize for Playwriting was created in 2005, encouraging new writers to find their voices and put them down on paper. And I'm really delighted that one of the winners is actually on at the Royal Exchange at the moment. So encourage everybody to go and see this, which is both a beautiful and optimistic play. It is about a young girl that's got cancer, so it is sad, but it is really joyful at the same time. And I'm really happy as well to say that this morning I just booked some other tickets for another play that won. This one's showing down in London, one of the winners from 2017. So it's really exciting now to be able to see the reach and the impact of this fabulous prize. Part of the relationship that we have with the Exchange is about extending out to broader communities as well. And due to a very generous £1 million gift from my father before he died, to the Royal Exchange's local exchange work, so work that they do in going out into the different boroughs of Greater Manchester to really bring those communities together. This is this fabulous sustainable pop-up theatre called The Den, which popped up in beautiful Staley Bridge Civic Hall. It's even more beautiful when you fill it full of people doing brilliant, beautiful things. And then finally, a relationship again that's been really significant to us for a long time is a relationship with Manchester International Festival that we were founding partners of and very instrumental in the initial conversation. So just want to show you a very short film that they've pulled together of our relationship with them. So I guess just in conclusion, you see we've got so many examples. There are many more that we have. I find it really difficult doing something like this and keep throwing things in at the last minute. And I know when I leave here that there will be things that I wish that I'd shared. But and I think, you know, for us, creating thriving cities is that balance of creating the spaces and the places, but it's also about enabling the people and the communities to do brilliant things together within those places and spaces. And personally, just from my own experience, I know that my life has been significantly enriched by the experiences that have been brought to me by both the trust and the business, and I'm really grateful for those. I know that my thinking has been challenged and my perspective has been significantly broadened by the exposure to these things, and above all, my relationship with the city and community of Manchester has been deeply, deeply enriched through it. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Absolutely amazing that we see all of that, and that absolutely is just a selection of what goes on here. And I think what I'd just really like to highlight is that pride that comes through from you when you talk about it is amazing, but almost we expect it because it's, you know, you're non-exec director, you're chair of the trust, but that pride in what Bruntwood does comes through in every single employee that I think we've met since we've worked for you, that it's people love working for Bruntwood, they love being part of those initiatives, and it's not just then you're coming to work to do your job, you're coming to work to build a thriving city. And you know, Elevate is very, very new, but it's always been, you know, a dream to be able to have a partnership like this because of that ethos. It's not just working with a property company, it's being part of all those other initiatives. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. Please do, people who are watching, if you've got any questions about anything on there, please do drop them into the chat. We will put as many links as possible into all of those different things that you've mentioned. But one of the things that we did touch on in that presentation was the importance of young people and creating those bridges into different careers, which leads us on beautifully to this video from Media Cups.
3, 2, 1, action! It doesn't matter who you are or what you're like. There's a place for everyone in our newsroom.
In the Media Club's pop-up TV studio and newsroom, we use our own passion to help us debate and create news as we navigate our way through the city of Colchester.
We meet lots of different characters along the way who teach us values like leadership, teamwork, honesty and courage.
There's loads of new things for us to learn and to help build our confidence, from photography and presenting to comic strip making, newspaper reporting and interviewing real life role models.
But quick everyone, we have a deadline. Let's get the team into the TV studio to create our next news report. Media Cubs, we're helping to diversify the news and help children to broadcast their confidence, one mini reporter at a time. Come on, are you ready to join us? And cut!
Diversity and inclusion are such important topics running all the way through what we've done today. But we often have companies say to us that they don't know how to recruit for diverse talent, and they don't know how to make sure that their organisations are right to support people from a wide range of different backgrounds and experiences. So I'm absolutely delighted now to introduce a panel looking at those issues around race, around gender, around neurodiversity. It's chaired by the wonderful Darren at Lorien, and I'll let him introduce his panellists.
The intro is always a bit
recording in progress. There you go.
oh dear.
Yeah, I was like having nightmares last night. I was like, if I forget to press record, because I've got to do a couple of these today, because unfortunately a few people were ill and couldn't make it. So I'm just like terrified I'm going to miss the recording on one. But cool, I will disappear now, and Darren, feel free to start kind of whenever you're ready.
Cool. Is everyone else ready? Everyone good? Cool. Right, here we go. Just wake myself up a bit. Morning, everyone. Thank you to all of you for giving up some of your time today to listen to us. And I'm really excited to be having this conversation with you all today around recruiting and retaining a diverse workforce. I'm Darren Topping, Director of Solutions and Insight at Lorien, who are one of the UK's largest recruitment solutions specialists with a focus on tech and all things MSP, RPO and recruitment projects. I've got a great panel here with me today, and I'll pass around them in screen order for them to do their own introductions. If I could pass to you first, Erica.
Hi, I'm Erica Ingham. I'm Global CFO at NCC Software Resilience.
Thanks, Erica. Over to you, Dan.
I'm Dan Sodergren from Your Flock and also from the Manchester Publicity Association.
Amazing, thank you. And last but not least, over to you, Kirsty, if that's okay.
Hi, my name is Kirsty Devlin and I run Manchester Codes and Leeds Codes, the coding school based in Manchester and Leeds.
Brilliant, thank you everyone. So we'll just dive straight in if that's okay, because obviously there's a lot to talk about in this space, and let's just as a starter think about if an organization's watching this and they're just starting out on a program for greater diversity in their workforce, how would you frame that business case for investment beyond it's the right thing to do for them? I don't know if you'd mind kicking us off, Kirsty, on that one.
Oh, good question.
Threw the hot potato over.
You have thrown the hot potato over. Obviously, there's numerous studies that are very clear. The fact that not only is it the right thing to do, it's more that it does generate business more profit. I've seen that myself over the last couple of years. The more effort that I've put in, not even basing it on profit alone, just basing it on like, the more diversity we have, the better ideas and the gaps we can identify more quickly, has seen us like retain staff for longer. It's seen, other benefits, not just financially. So morale, retention, all of those good things because we invested in that area. So for me, pitching to investors isn't always just about it's just not just always about the bottom line. It's about the other effects as well. Especially in the world of tech, you want to retain your staff, and that's one way that we managed to do that.
Darren, you're on mute by the way, Darren. But being a finance person, I'm happy to jump in and talk about business cases if you like.
Please do.
So that's probably my favourite subject. So I think it's really interesting because apart from the moral aspect of things, as a finance person, I can see that it clearly makes measurable financial sense for business to embrace diversity. And there are multiple studies that have taken place over quite a few years now, actually, the main one being the McKinsey study that talks about very clear statistics about the right representation at board level. So I've got a little snippet here actually. So if we look, what they did was they looked at the difference between the top quartile and the bottom quartile in terms of gender diversity and also in terms of ethnicity at board level. And what they found actually that the difference in outperformance between the top and the bottom effectively was 25% for gender and 36% for ethnicity. And it's quite interesting as well, because they've been doing this for a few years, McKinsey, you can see that that's actually grown. So the gender one was 15 originally, and then it sort of went 21% and 25. So we can see actually that it's getting more and more important and it's making more and more of a difference. So I think that's really significant. And they also drew some conclusions in their report to say, well, they've just looked at these two aspects really, but if you consider, a sexual orientation or neurodiversity, they would assume that it would have the same sort of impact as well, which I think is key. And so that's the sort of pure stats, and KPMG's done a few surveys on that as well. But also in terms of cost, you're looking at, retention costs of your people. In tech at the moment, there's a real problem getting people because there's an expertise shortage. So you're looking at, actually attracting the right talent, the cost of replacing people who've left because they haven't felt able to be themselves or accepted in the workplace as well. So there's some significant both strategic costs and operational costs. And of course, we all know that it reduces risk as well, which is hard to measure, but it reduces risk to have a more diverse board as well running a business.
And just because I do love a good stat myself, and because I come from the tech side of it, when the Google did the same kind of analysis, and they did it around innovation. So at the moment, if you have a more diverse board and a more diverse team, it's about 19%. You're 19% better at innovation, which might not sound a lot, but believe me, 3% better at innovation is game changing. So 19% is it is literally first to market. It's that kind of advantage. So yeah, I'm with Eric. I run a tiny startup that has to have every kind of advantage it does, and so we recruited from a diverse point of view, not just because the founders were diverse, not just because I champion diversity, I think it's better for the world and it's a better thing, but actually because it's a better business. And this is the thing that kind of galls me about these conversations, because fair enough, if it wasn't a better business, then you'd be like, oh, okay, that's it's a good thing to do, please do it, but it's actually a better business. So it's a better business, better startups, better innovation, hold your staff more, make more money, do everything. But that comes from diversity. So it still amazes me, 20 or 25 years on, we're kind of having the conversations where we're having to say, well, why? Because these studies have been going on forever and have been proving this point forever. But I promised I wouldn't witter on. But I mean, there's a stat there in the innovation being key. And that's the reason why, of course, with more people with different ideas, then you get more innovation. So that's another good reason to do it.
But just imagine, and I think many businesses are sort of trying to eke out cost savings for a few percent and trying to increase revenue by a few percent, and they're totally missing the point on diversity, and they're totally missing the point in relation to the competitors as well. And they should really be sort of panicking and really pushing it, and you don't necessarily see that across the board.
But imagine if you had an extra 20% of profit. Just because you've put the work in, you've put the effort in, you've changed some, changed the way you've done your adverts, you've changed the way that you do advertising, where you advertise, 20% profit, that's a huge amount, especially when you're valuing a business, 20% is a huge amount of uplift. It's crazy to think that people, overlook that now.
And you were saying before, Kirsty, about the people leaving, and again, with the stats, but they're all coming from facts. And I do like to do facts because otherwise it becomes anecdotal, and then you kind of people can easily go, oh well, I don't believe that. And it's like, well, okay, if I prove it with stats, then you're going to have to, because they're all on. You can just Google them, or Yahoo. I don't know. You can't just say Google, can you? It sounds terrible, but you can search for them on the internet. It's about 34% of people leave a company because they don't feel that they fit into the culture. Okay, now that rises almost exponentially, sadly, if you are from if it's a non-diverse business and you're from a diverse background, because of course, because you turn up and you're like, oh, and then the little things that happen and you leave. But even if it was, everyone is exactly the same, business cultures are completely different. But 34% of people leave because they don't feel that they fit into the business culture. And so if you can create a nicer, warmer, more inclusive and diverse environment, people will stay. But 34% is a lot. It's a third of people will go because they don't like it. And so it rises to 88% of people say that their boss not being good is one of the key factors. So it's actually the leaders and bosses, which is the biggest reason why people leave. But still, company culture not being diverse and inclusive. And I think, as Erica rightly said, this is the kind of special sauce now that tech companies are going to have. Not even that. It just amazes me, because Manchester should be inherently good at this. Yeah, and we should be so good that we beat the world in this, because we have the foundations to be the best at this. And yet still, we're better than London and fintech, but that's the very low bar because they are not very diverse. But even those, even that community realised this is a giant problem, or a massive opportunity that Europe and especially Britain has to actually, do this in a really big way. But I'm not going to. I'll start sounding like a politician soon, so I'm going to stop.
I absolutely love what you said there, though, Dan. Particularly, in the industry that I come from, in the background, and over 1 million live jobs in the UK right now. The fact that increased diversity, increased inclusion in your business can help you attract and crucially retain more people than before is amazing. And if you don't mind, if I stick with you there, Dan, because you've segued nicely into my second question there, and that is, what can we do in Manchester and the North, including Leeds, Kirsty, specifically to lead that charge for greater diversity within an organisation's workforce? What can we do that leverages our inherent advantages that we've got in our wonderful cities?
Well, I think you said for me today, I don't know if you did say, Dan, so if I've just interrupted anybody else.
No, I did.
Okay, good. I'm making sure. Great. Okay. The actual answer from my business point of view and from a small tech business point of view, and people don't like it because it's very, very simple. It's radical simplistic. And it is recruit more people from a diverse background. And they go, oh, no, but there's a shortage. No, there isn't. Oh, look, there is. No, there isn't. There isn't a shortage of women in tech. No, there isn't. No, honestly, there isn't. The reason why there isn't is because of the amazing work done by people like Kirsty, done by people like tech returners, done by the people that, or massive organizations. So we could say, okay, if you are a huge company, you're looking at a very specific role, yes, it's harder to recruit. Yes, true, absolutely, because it is. But it's also harder because of how you've done it. So you haven't done it the right way. You're not looking in the right places. Yeah. So for your flock, and I can only talk about what we do, we didn't recruit people because they didn't come from a diverse background. So I could have relatively easily recruited I'm not going to say, well, no, I could have, middle-aged white man with experience doing this role. Yes, I could, but I didn't, because I had 49 people and 40 of them were that. And I didn't have to. And I stopped, and my investors were like, well, surely. And I was like, no, because we've got to make sure that we're not doing that. So we stayed for at least a month until we got someone who's from a diverse background. Now, don't get me wrong, if we're 30 people, 50 people, 100 people, we might not be able to do it all the time, but we can make sure that we're above the national average in the stats, because the national average is so terrible. So I'll give you some just for your flock, but we're a tiny team, but 60% of our developers and our advisors are people of color. Yeah, well, 60%, which is, I don't know, there's only 7 of us, but the point being is it's the principle. Yeah, 60% of our investors are women, and people on our board are women. 10 times, it's 10 times more than the national stat. We can all make a difference, especially when you're a small business. We can all make a difference just by picking the right people and choosing people. Not, we recruit people based on values, not on CVs and these other things. Obviously, your flock as a team engagement tool, it talks about values. We're going to do that too. Yeah, of course we are. But what we find with people who use your flock, you actually start to recruit more diverse people because you're not doing it the old-fashioned way. You're doing it around values and the value proposition piece, which actually then makes a nicer employee brand, which actually makes it more powerful for you. So radical simplicity, Darren, what you can do is you can change your own actions and you can recruit the right people because they are there. You just might have a bit more faith. They're also there because of the amazing work done by people like Kirsty. That's the honest other reason why they're there. So I'm going to pass over.
And what do you think, Kirsty? You're filling up this talent pool from a different angle. What are your thoughts?
I don't think that I would like to caveat what you just said, Dan, because I don't fill the pool with lots of diverse people. Well, I have. However, it's limited because people have to pay in order to come and join Manchester Codes, right? Which comes from a place of pretty much, well, not privilege. Most people are working that come and join us. They have a full-time job, and then they're able to pivot over 6 months into a career in tech. So we have increased our diversity. I think the biggest problem we've had is that the groups that are not represented in technology, for example, don't have access to this kind of cash. They don't have access that, they're paying high amounts of rent, high bills, they're on poor wages, they cannot afford a course like ours. So we've got work to do. However, in saying that, we've seen a massive amount of increase in diversity in terms of gender, people of colour, because I run the business. So it makes it feel safe for them to be a student, safe for tutors to come and teach for us, all that good stuff. Going back to your question before on Leeds and what can be done, I'm just going to plug the report that came out last week from Diverse and Equal and the Wild Gang, is my voice there. Women in Leeds Digital with Sarah Tulip and also Annette Joseph came up with this amazing study on diversity in tech. It's a historic document because a document like this has never ever been produced. It's got huge backers, Leeds City Council and the rest. They pulled out some really good stats that actually we were saying about 19% more profitable. They're saying it's 35% more profitable if they get diversity. And there's an untapped amount of, I think it's 24 billion, that if we did this right, we could unlock further. So I'll give you the link to this after this, if you like. I can share it out. It's really good. Head to the website, download the report. Action comes from having tangible reports like that. An action plan. People are sick of stats. They're like, right, 19% this, 35% that, whatever. How do I make this happen? And how do I make it quick, do it happen quickly. So I think that's the disconnect, is people want an action plan and they want it right now. They want it last week. They don't want to talk anymore. They want to make action.
That's amazing. Thank you, Kirsty. And as a confession from me, up until a few months ago, I didn't really understand neurodiversity and the real advantages within it. But then another plug. I hope we're going to get lots of sponsors from this. But I was speaking to a lady from Arctic Shores, their chief data scientist, and we were talking about how they help do different assessments to get the right candidates in process, and that really impacts neurodiverse candidates. I don't know, if Erica, if you could maybe start us off about why neurodiversity is so important within organisations.
Yeah, so if we park the kind of moral reason and if we park the kind of risk and representation reasons that we've talked about in terms of increasing profitability, I think with neurodiversity, what you're seeing is a diversity of thought and a diversity of approach. So in many organizations, such as creative organizations where you need that creative thinking, it's very, very strong in various neurodiverse categories, right? Tech, detail, the ability, particularly in cybersecurity, to think differently and to think a sort of in a different perspective can make a massive difference to business performance. So getting attracting and retaining neurodiverse individuals is about better business performance. It is kind of that simple, really, and it's about reducing the one-stop approach that you get with an undiverse team, I think. And I think on the recruitment side, and we're talking about, you said, what can we do to make, businesses more diverse? I think we do need to change a lot of our recruitment processes. And we did that in our last place to make it more accessible for neurodiverse people, such as, not filling in massive long forms, for example, and sort of huge spur of the moment, sort of on the spot type interviews can often not go down particularly well. So you're not necessarily seeing the best of people. And then once you do have those people, we've implemented in my previous business extensive neurodiversity training for managers. And I think that made a huge difference. It made a difference to people feeling that they could be themselves in the workplace, and consequently, that obviously makes them want to stay rather than leave. Just to better manage people and get better results as well out of the teams, and I think that's really important too. So I'm a huge advocate of changing recruitment practices so that it's fair from a neurodiverse perspective, and also from educating managers and businesses on neurodiversity, and also changing various things in terms of how teams work as well.
That's super interesting, Erica. Thank you. And we've managed to get through a whole 20 minutes of a conversation so far without mentioning the pandemic, which is a record actually for us at the moment. But if we think about hybrid working, which seems to almost have become normalized now, what we're seeing across the field, hybrid working, in my opinion, has possibly had a positive impact on providing increased flexibility and therefore potentially helping with the retention of diverse employees. What other practices are out there, do we think, that can help with that retention of a diverse workforce if you're lucky enough to have, great diversity in your organisation already? I don't know if you want to kick us off with that, Erica.
Yeah, so I mean, hybrid working is very interesting. Pandemic-wise, actually, I think pandemic has widened the divide anecdotally between, sort of women who have a lot of childcare responsibilities or single dads and people who don't. Because when we were all working from home, those people who were on their own with small children, really suffered, I think, and it was very stressful for them compared to those that maybe there was two partners sharing the childcare and that type of stuff. So the pandemic hasn't necessarily been a good thing, I don't think, for everybody. But for me, I think it's all about flexible working. I think that's really important. Flexible working helps women come back to work after maternity. Flexible working helps single mums and dads, so single parents, come back to, deal with work-life balance and being able to pick up their kids or drop them off and that type of stuff. And when you speak to a lot of people, you're hearing that isn't really coming on in the leaps and bounds that we'd like. I think the pandemic has helped the flexible approach, but I think we are in danger of slipping back as everyone returns to work. And so I think that's one of the greatest levelers, really.
Brilliant. And as anyone who follows Dan knows, he's a huge advocate of work-life balance. Dan, can you give us any other key tips as to how you managed to achieve such nirvana in your work and personal life?
You'll need that. Yeah.
I don't think that's the case at all. But I understand what you're saying. I certainly am. Yeah, I've been a passionate kind of remote work and evangelist for a very, very long time. And now the remote work revolution's happened, I kind of seem to have been not the madman in the wilderness anymore. The prophet. It's just without being silly about it. The pandemic has digital transformation pieces were happening anyway. Yeah, but there's the old and slightly silly joke goes, was it the CTO, the CEO, the CIO that brought digital transformation? And the answer to your business, and the answer, of course, is no, it's COVID. And that's the reality. And we're talking, like in the NHS, it's completely different. I mean, I tried to make the NHS change for 5 years. There's no chance. Well, and then now, poof, just changed. Literally, doctors are now saying, well, of course we're going to be doing video calls. Dude, you couldn't do them 3 years ago. They're like, I can't use an iPad. I'm a doctor. How do I have that chat? It's massive changes, yeah? Now, we all know that these changes are actually just people. It's just people changes. Like we all had Zoom. I was telling people, let's get a Zoom call. I can't do Zoom calls. Well, I have to do a sales and I have to talk to you and hold your hand and all that kind of stuff. Because that's what we believed you had to do, yeah? Well, I can't recruit people who are then going to share a job and work asynchronously because it's impossible. Everyone has to be in the office. Well, now we know that's not true. I can't have a remote workforce. You can't build a massive company. Canva's worth $40 billion. It was remote first, not remote forced. Yeah. So all these things now, we have poster people, but it's not just that, it's the whole movement, but it's happened. And it's happened so quickly that so many people were taken unaware, because of course it's a pandemic, it's a black swan event, yeah. Every 100 years or so, we didn't realize it was coming. But what we do know is the future now can't go back. And it does make me smile when people are saying, oh, it's okay. When people start coming back to the offices, they're not coming back. Not at the numbers you had before, and they're not going to come back, and they're not certainly not going to be. Literally, I was out last night, and we were just chatting, and everyone was laughing about the fact, and I thought, and I was, because obviously I'm a passionate believer in it, and it just made me smile deep down because they were like, no, I don't know anyone who's doing 4 days in the office. But just imagine saying that 3 years ago, it would be the opposite, wouldn't it? Like 4% of people remote working 3 or 4 years ago. Now it's like quite a few. Now it can't be everybody, and I know it can't be everybody, and I get that, yeah. But it's the same thing, isn't it? It's like when people worked in the fields. And then they went into the factories. It's the same, it's the industrial revolution moment. It's a massive pandemical shift. And I know same principle is people say, but people will be left behind. But they don't have to be this time. They don't have to be, because we can start leveling up with infrastructure, with digital things, with everything. Now, I get it. A barman cannot work remotely. An airplane pilot cannot work remotely. I get it. I get these things. Doctors can't. But loads of people are going to go into industries which aren't remote. But let's be fair, if you're an information or a knowledge worker, it is likely you will be remote and have more life-work balance. I still haven't got it right. I run a startup, and I help run a startup and co-founded one. Believe me, life-work balance. I just work crazy, and then I see my daughter, and then I work when she's asleep. And that's basically how it works. So if life-work balance is working 24 hours a day, but making sure you see your daughter, yeah, I've got that cracked. I'm not sure that is quite life-work balance yet. But I think it does give us the opportunity, doesn't it? And it's really important that if we embrace this flexible work, but we're not even there yet, remember, flexible work is truly asynchronous working as well. And it's all these other things and other factors that does allow more women back into the workforce if they can do a couple of hours a day. And this is now, stuff of mad people's dreams, perhaps, but you could start doing job shares where you just chip in for a bit. And we've seen it with things like Uber. You don't have to be an Uber driver all the time. Or maybe you don't have to be a coder all the time, or an information worker all the time, or a secretary all the time, or whatever. You just share the jobs, and then universal basic income comes in, and then we get to the socialist nirvana. Now I'll stop there with the rant, but I think that's where the opportunity is. The other way, of course, it would work out is that people start to get really ostracized, and lots of people. There's a really big piece done by Bruce Days, and then I'll finish. But it's to do with the lack of diversity on the board also massively correlates with their desire to get back to the office. And it literally correlates. It's just a pure correlation, yeah? So that's quite scary and slightly dangerous, isn't it? Because it's just showing us the reality. You know, the people who want to go back to the office full time are actually also the people who don't do diversity very much. And I think that speaks volumes without it needing stats.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Dan. And almost a side question for you then, Kirsty. The people that you take into Manchester codes, Leeds codes, where you're retraining them into the world of tech, what reasons do they give for wanting to upskill in the world of tech beyond, you know, obviously it's a great career to have? Is there something around, you know, better work-life balance, different ways of working, nicer environments that pulls them into wanting to do that? Or am I off the mark completely?
Good question. It's really varied. I think the majority of people want a better life, and they have a current role. They're either not being valued, they just did it because it was a thing they did after uni. So our average age of student is about 30. So I think a lot happens in that age between, you know, university and 30, where you're probably like, you know, my parents encouraged me to go to university. I got onto this treadmill. I'm now working in the NHS. I'm now, you know, working in hospitality. I'm not getting, you know, I'm doing something for passion and actually it's not paying me well. There's so many different reasons. But ultimately, people know that they can have a really good job, really well paid job that's in demand, and they get to have some flexibility. I think that's the expectation of what they're looking for.
Brilliant. So there's one question left for everyone, but it's quite a big question. So please be brave and feel free to jump in. Hopefully there'll be lots of people watching this. So if an organisation's watching this or people are watching this and they want to know what 1, 2 or 3 things we can do in the next month to make a difference in either recruiting or retaining diverse talent, what tips would you give them?
Good question.
Who's going to be brave?
Could I say one that I'm going to experiment with? I'm just going to share it with you all. So I don't know if anyone's noticed or whether people have right. So I live in Sale, and I've lived here through the pandemic mainly. Walking around, the makeup of Sale and Manchester has changed significantly. We've got a large influx of Chinese immigrants that have come from Hong Kong. I see this as like a pivotal moment for Manchester and for the UK to start diversifying in a new way. They're already that group of people are already bringing like going to bring along as well, and what new ideas we're going to see be born from Manchester. So that makes me excited. So I think it's about, right, if we've got this group of people, how are we going to speak to that group of people? So next week I'm going to run some ads in Mandarin. I only know one word in Mandarin, which is "wo hai ni," which is "I love you," and I won't tell you where I got that word from. But it's about, right, what can we do? I'm going to trial getting new students from a different group of people that I probably don't market to enough. So we might put adverts out in English, but what if something catches someone's attention in Mandarin and it makes you feel like, you know, someone sees me, someone appreciates me? Can we do the same, not just in Mandarin? Can we do it in Urdu? Can we do it in other languages? Let's mix it up. Like, I'm so sick and tired of people saying, oh, I can't find diversity. If you speak to that group of people and you know where they are, go to them. Find out where they hang out. Go and make some effort.
Oh, I thought that was me that had frozen. Oh, you're back again, Kirsty.
Oh no.
We got the impact of it. Don't worry. I absolutely love that, because it's all about being creative, thinking outside the box, and in many ways, something that I talk about quite a lot. Marginal gains make the difference. Like being creative and doing that advert in Mandarin, just going that one extra field, it might make a 10% difference, and yeah, that's crucial. How about you, Erica? What are there any gems from within NCC Group that you could share with us?
Interesting, because when I was looking for a new role over the last summer, I saw NCC's values, and it said we embrace difference, and it talked about a quirky culture, and I thought, oh yeah, I like that, that's me. And And I've never seen a company sort of or a PLC sort of overtly say that before, and it was quite powerful actually. And so I do think that sort of overtly stating your values is quite important. The other thing that I would do is I would change our outdated recruitment, our application process. I think the application process is, 20 years ago, and it hasn't really moved on, apart from the fact that it might be an online form and putting your CV in online, but it's not changed at all. And that doesn't benefit, diverse people at all. And I think I'm quite a fan of unconscious bias training. I think it's really surprising what unconscious biases people do have who are recruiting, in many areas, but, particularly neurodiversity as well. People can think, oh, this person's coming across as a little bit unusual. And so I suppose there'd be my starting tips that you could put in right away.
Could I follow on from that, Erica? Sorry, I think you've got a massive point there, right, on the application process. I'll just give you an example quickly. So I'm a trustee of Octagon Theatre. It's a theatre in Bolton. Please do check it out. It's brand new, been remade. And I'm the youngest trustee on the board. I'm 29, which shouldn't be some big, amazing thing, but this is this is something that frequently happens on boards, charities, everywhere. They never hire young board members. And I think that for me, what they did to attract me was I would never apply for someone like that. But not only did they reach out to me, they encouraged the application process to be video. And that works with a younger audience, younger audiences, getting them to fill in a long form to either buy goods these days. They want a one-click, pay for everything, sales process. Video on applications is crucial, giving that option and making it easy. That's how you're going to get, a diverse workforce. Following on from your point, Erica.
And also following on from Erica's point about values, which I absolutely loved, obviously, because that's what Your Flock itself does, which is good, which is why I invested in it 3 years ago. And it's doing okay. So have a look at yourflock.co.uk. Why not? You can start then recruiting based on values. Yeah. And then getting to know your walk for work, the people that you're working with, especially in teams, more and more. And that's really going to be key, because when you then start recruiting, you want to have people that share values, because actually it's deeper. So what people always think when I say share values, they're like, oh, no, that's not diversity. No, it is. You share the values, yeah, but then you're diverse on top. So personality, obviously, you have to have different personalities. You have to have different neurodiversity. You have to have gender, age, wage. We very rarely talk about socioeconomic stuff, but it's hugely important. And the other one we don't, because it's a massive elephant in the room, especially in the creative and digital and tech and the MPA, is age. Age is a huge one that people don't talk about on both sides, with boards, not enough young people, but then on the other side, creative teams, not enough old people. I think you're actually killed in marketing if you're over 50. I think that's actually, it's like, one of those moments of Logan's Run, and you have to go, we can edit that out, can't we? But it's one of those moments that happen. Yeah. So if we're talking about in the next month, what can you do? You can definitely look at your own team, look at the values, get to know them more. Use this as an opportunity to really bring the humane back to human resources. Human resources has not necessarily been the best thing in the world. Sorry, we work with loads of HR people, some are great, some are not. And you're right, with this unconscious bias that they have as human beings, sometimes technology can be better, because you can't always trust a human being. Sorry to say it, it's just part of being a human being, isn't it? It's part of life. Millions of different biases. I'll give you another one as well, and sorry to kind of harp on with it, but the one we can't change in a month, but I'd love people to do is the amount of people that have got tech businesses who are diverse themselves. Okay, and the biggest one is VC funding. Yeah, and I'm just going to go on a kind of a bit of a thing on this, because it's really, really bad, right? So with VC funding, if you look at VCs in general, it's a pretty non-diverse group. Yeah, I think it's 5% of women in the US. Yeah, and that means that only 3.8% of 2% of the funding actually gets to women. If you're a black woman, that goes down to 0.2% of the funding. This is insane. This is insanity, because it's 18%. Also, those people who are doing these diverse companies, they are a more robust company, so the VCs should be investing in them, but they're not, because they come from very non-diverse backgrounds and always have done. And this is what I found out the other day, and it shocked me to the core. And it is, if you're going for £1 million of the funding, then for people who've got a connection to Cambridge, either on the board level or as a founder or the rest of it, the people who get £1 million, 70% of those people have a connection to Oxford or Cambridge in some way, on the board level, in the tech level, senior leadership. 70% from 2 universities, people, 70%. Now you wonder why we can't change the world and we can't do all this other stuff. Well, if we can't start businesses that are diverse, then that's going to make it harder. And if we can't fund businesses that are diverse, and I can see it happening now, I can see the change coming because there are now VC funds that are realizing that they've got to get behind it. And they're realizing it actually because they can see the numbers, and the numbers are better for diverse tech companies. So I get it. You can see Bumble, you can see all these other massive companies, but it's taken 10 years, but the numbers are still so low. So I know we can't change it in a month, but I think, if we can start looking at where the money comes from, because sadly, sometimes in tech, money and investment is going to be key to your survival, as well as having a great team. So I think the more women we can get on the board and as investors and VCs, the better we're going to make the world. That's the honest truth. But I did promise I wouldn't rant, and then ranted. Sorry, little rant again.
It was a good rant though, Dan. It's a very good way to finish. So I hope there was lots of value there for everyone that tuned in to watch this. But a huge thanks, Kirsty, Erica and Dan. I thought that was a great discussion, loads to chat about. And thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, Darren. Brilliant. Don't know if you still wave at the end of these things. I still wave, sorry.
What a fantastic and inspiring discussion that was. And it leads us on nicely to our next speaker, the wonderful Alexander Weise from the Royal Exchange Theatre. The theatre to some people might feel like something that's completely disconnected from local communities, that's perhaps only available to certain sections of society. And the work that the Royal Exchange Theatre has been doing really just challenges all of that it's as much about putting out great performances as it is bringing communities into the space. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Roy to tell us more about the work going on there.
Cool. Hi everyone, my name is Alexander Weise and I'm Joint Artistic Director and Chief Executive at the Royal Exchange Theatre in Manchester. Thanks for inviting me to join you today, and I'm really humbled to be invited to speak alongside many other brilliant speakers and to your audiences too. So it's been a really, really dark time for the creative industries for everyone, as you all know, and there are immense challenges ahead. But there's one question that's remained at the forefront of the Royal Exchange's ambition, and that is, how can theatre support vibrant communities? We're more than just an arts venue. We are a civic space, a centre for our communities, a safe space for people from any background to come together and be a part of a shared experience, to learn, to be expressive, inspired, and be included in the nation's conversations. As artists, it's our duty to ask questions of the world around us and to be provocateurs, to encourage ideas and dialogue between people. Our work in theatre is such a unique and understated tool for social impact. Theatre and stories get between the cracks of democracy and bureaucracy. They ask questions of the bits of life that feel messy, scary, hard to define. But they also help us to celebrate, acknowledge, revere, appreciate all that life has to offer. We are world renowned for our work on the stage, our reimagined classics, innovative musicals, and commitment to new writing. It's all celebrated for its high quality, with critic Lynn Gardner referring to us as the National Theatre of the North. However, it is the work that we do with our participants and our communities which sits at the very heart of what we do as an organisation. So throughout the pandemic, our engagement work has been a vital lifeline for some of the most vulnerable communities across Greater Manchester. We move sessions online for both our young and elders companies, working with them to teach them how to Zoom and providing moments of connection through an incredibly isolating time. As the country opened up again, one of the first priorities was to bring back those companies to in-person events and performances where possible. And in July, we did just that. We had our first intergenerational production in 2 years with our young company and elders company in a devised piece called Wit and Wisdom, which was all about everything funny and witty and the science and joy of laughter in life. And then we had in August our first Young Company production again in 2 years in person, The Survivor's Guide to Living, written by incredible Manchester-based writer called Sodergren. This was the first time that the Young Company Summer Show also was performed in the Module Theatre instead of the studio. And these were two of the first free productions in the theatre, full stop, since reopening after the pandemic, placing huge value on that work with communities. Our unique engagement programme, Local Exchange, enables us to genuinely connect with residents across Greater Manchester in meaningful and authentic ways. It sees us take residents in areas of low engagement over 3 years, bringing together people, partners and artists to cement long-lasting relationships and allowing participants the opportunity to create work that reflects their communities. In year 1 of the programme, we consult with our chosen area, form local partnerships, and crucially recruit a group of local ambassadors who inform all of our decision-making, all the projects, and all the planning. These individuals are at the core of the Local Exchange programme and activities and are pivotal in shaping and leading on the work that we deliver. Our second year sees us deliver activities with children and young people, older people, and with community partners, culminating in a 2-week festival in our unique and inventive pop-up theatre, The Den, which brings live events, workshops and talks to the area. This is made possible through investment from the Oglesby Charitable Trust, and it's a sustainable space which creates the maximum opportunity for creativity whilst always considering the minimum environmental impact. Programmed by the ambassadors, the festival reflects the needs of the community, offering employment as well and training for local residents, as well as high quality art and professional productions. Working across the entire staff team, the Den empowers our ambassadors to explore what culture and creativity can do for their communities and brings in the resources and knowledge of our staff to showcase high quality work to their friends, family and neighbours. In the summer, after a long wait due to COVID, we were ecstatic to finally see the Den visit Spinners Mill in Lee. After working in partnership with the community and with Lee Spinners Mill for 3 years, we finished our delivery year in the area with the Den Festival of performances, live comedy, workshops, talks, spoken word, interactive theatre for children, including a little ghost hunt, and much, much more. So for 8 days, we were situated there and showcased 27 local and professional productions to 751 audience members. We developed a training programme for residents to learn front of house skills too in the Den, and this will then transfer to the Royal Exchange as another opportunity as part of the programme. One of these participants also is now a volunteer at the mill, which is a really, really, really brilliant sign of success of the programme. The success of the Den was evident from the ambassadors who curated and programmed the festival to audience members through to Spinners Mill itself. They hadn't put on any large-scale events before, and due to COVID were behind in their planning for this. So after the Den was there, Spinners Mill had the confidence to host a Pride event in the same location as the Den, welcoming over 300 people into their space. I'm now going to show you an extract of what Local Exchange means to some of those ambassadors.
I'm just looking forward to all the different things that are going to be happening here, from theatre to comedy to music to dance, and something for everybody, so it's a really exciting programme.
We're really excited about the Den coming to Lee. We've been waiting for a couple of years, obviously with COVID, but it's bringing theatre on our doorstep, getting local people involved, local community groups, artists, people who really love the theatre, and we're going to get communities down here, families, and people are going to get really, really involved.
Just feels great, because I began to think at one time it was never going to happen. But
There was definitely skeptical points, but I've found it fun the whole way through. It's been great doing it from the start to where I am now, because it's so great being a part of such a big project like this, and such like a creative project as well, and bringing so many different people together. It kind of warms your heart in a weird way, but.
What we want is a lasting legacy for Lee as well, so that's really important to us as well. So it's the networks, the friendships, the community groups and the connections that happen afterwards, and actually, you know, it's people's careers as well, so we really want to invest in people's skills and talents. So excellent, we're really looking forward to it.
People won't come here, they're just trying to keep you safe.
So important that the Royal Exchange isn't just resident in our beautiful but stationary building. Our theatre we're here for all of the communities of Greater Manchester, and there's no better way than coming to Lee or coming to Tameside or wherever we might be to connect with people. And it's not just about us bringing stuff to different communities either. It's also a chance for us to, it sounds cheesy, but it's a true exchange, and gives us a chance to connect with people, to see where people are, what they might want, and the hope is that as much as we're bringing, we're also receiving, and that can influence our programme, the Welcome in Our Own Theatre.
It's about learning about the values of the people that exist around us. And there are so many things that can inform about the way that we operate as a charity as well. So yeah, this is sort of like the midway point of that learning and of that exchange, and then in the third year they go on to basically create their own projects, their own, like, seeing what they understand is fit for their communities. They get to make their own projects, and then they will fly.
In our town, Lee deserves the best of everything. So the fact that the Royal Exchange have chosen Lee to come and put the den here, I mean, I'm immensely proud to be a part of it.
Prior to the pandemic, our pilot year took us to Tameside, and now, after a long period of uncertainty, the Ambassadors Group have just finished their third and final year with us, the Legacy Year. It's about giving the community the skills that they need to continue the work we've started in the borough. So this year, the group decided to set themselves up as a community interest company, and they raised funds to enhance the budget that we gave to them as part of Local Exchange. They wanted to develop a play about Tameside, the lives, the people, places and stories that make up the area, and put this on. From the marketing, ticket sales, venue, budgeting and performance, the group, in collaboration with us, did just that. On the 1st of October, a rehearsed reading of No Such Thing as Ordinary was performed at the Guide Bridge Theatre in Ashton, depicting the lives of Tameside's residents that we met through 10 community workshops earlier this year. The show was a sellout and even had a waiting list of residents wanting to attend. And the group now want to develop the piece into a fully rehearsed production to make sure that everyone in Tameside is able to see the play highlighting their community. What is different about Local Exchange is that it sits at the very heart of what we do as an organisation. It enables us to be genuinely connected with residents across Greater Manchester in meaningful and authentic ways. Their response and feedback informs wider programme, commissioning, participatory and decision-making processes to help us to ensure that the work that the Royal Exchange produces is truly representative. The beneficiaries of the project are not just the participants, but also us, the theatre. Each phase unlocks a greater understanding of our local communities and audiences and helps us to shape our offer for the future. It enables us as an organisation to grow and to stay relevant so that we can continue to invite new audiences into our theatre and appeal to a broader and more diverse range of people. Now more than ever, theatres need to be relevant and connected in order to survive, and this project enables us to do that. I want to talk about another way. I've just talked about how we go out, but I actually want to talk about one of the ways that we are now beginning to try to bring people in. And this is through a program called Disrupt. So the Royal Exchange Theatre Company occupies space that was historically connected to the transatlantic slave trade. One would assume that this is common knowledge, but it's difficult to know because we never talk about it. As artistic directors, we've been told candidly by close friends that there are many people in Manchester who have very complex relationships with the building, and therefore to the theatre, the stories, and the opportunity to enjoy and benefit from the richness that a local or regional theatre has to offer. The architecture of the Royal Exchange Building evokes such a broad variety of responses from people. Some people walk in and they love it. They're enamored by the grandeur and the stained glass, juxtaposed by the colourful spaceship-like module theatre sitting at the centre, like a playful protest, an artistic occupation, one that perhaps wasn't even supposed to last as long as it has. But for others, it's a symbol of elitism, imperialism, disenfranchisement. It's too posh for some, feels like a museum, makes you feel like you've got to submit to the way that the tall pillars remind you of the power that sits out of your reach. The arrogance of the gold adornment almost mocking you as you enter. No reaction is right or wrong, but rather is true of the individual who experiences it and therefore is valid and should be valued, heard, celebrated and challenged. When we started, a photocopied image of H.L. Saunders and Frederick Sargent's interior of the Royal Exchange was left in our office. It's a painting, a really famous painting that's in the art gallery actually, but a photocopy of it was left in our office. And this was before the pandemic actually. We weren't entirely sure how it got there, whether it was an accident or an intentional provocation, and maybe we'll never know. But we were struck by the number of men in the picture. We imagined what they might sound like, what their lives might have been like, and what they might have been whispering to one another. We were told that was how deals were done, almost in complete silence. How interesting. We also spoke about the fact that neither Bryony or myself were represented in that painting. There were no black men, no queer women, no people with invisible disabilities, and certainly none of them looked working class, donning long black coats and tall top hats. We dreamt of maybe recreating this image one day, staging it, using loads of costumes from stock, and inviting all of Manchester to take up space. And maybe we will one day. But that's just one instance, that's just one moment, and doesn't necessarily change the relationship that people have with our theatre. So we invented Disrupt, a program of riotous curated events which invite individuals or companies from a range of communities and art forms to take ownership of the Royal Exchange Theatre's Great Hall, to playfully, politically, creatively disrupt the environment with the creativity and art that exist in the curator's cultural reservoir, to teach us what the varying communities of Greater Manchester might like to see in our spaces, the ways in which they'd like to be welcomed, the vibe, the energy, the entertainment, the art, the stories, the way that we communicate the stories, the way that we market it. All of this an experiment to allow those who have not felt an affinity to have the opportunity to see themselves, their culture, people like them occupying our space, being at ease and teaching us about the values of their community. These might range from Vogue balls to giant colouring in for children, to dance jams for the incredible dance community that is here in Manchester, which isn't currently given a space for. There's no dance theatre in Manchester, which is crazy. Food tasting for all of the brilliant multicultural cuisine that exists in Greater Manchester. Unorthodox special events where we try to learn the creativity and values that are celebrated in a given targeted community. The first Disrupt event is made possible through a bespoke partnership with Warner Media and sees us offering Mancunian writer, performance artist and producer Keisha Thompson 2 special commissions, one to write a play of her choice and the other which will shape the first disruption this autumn, which is actually next week. We've commissioned Keisha to write a poem to invite all the people who enter our great hall to take a moment to recognise where we are, what the space has been in the past, and invite us all to join the conversations about how we shape a Royal Exchange for the future, where all feel included, seen, held, privileged, enriched, and equal. This poem will be available in a variety of accessible mediums, both in person and digitally, and will stay put, an occupation just like the theatre, disrupting the order of things, hopefully, for as long as we're there. The pandemic has been really brutal to theatre, and this has been public knowledge, and getting the wheels turning again hasn't been easy at all. But the thing that drives us the most to get back on our feet is the greater purpose of providing a space for connection through art, to provide the much needed creativity and expression to Greater Manchester for its healing and its recovery, and to make sure that the arts and the democracy that art can provide stay available and accessible to all people. We shouldn't exist as a publicly subsidised organisation if we aren't making this possible for everybody. We're currently celebrating our 45th birthday as an organisation and in that occupation in that really special building. And we dedicated this birthday to reigniting the theatre through an incredible fundraising campaign. And again, our supporters, another huge segment of our community, have shown us that we're worth it, to shown us that the work that we do is great for the city and the region. Survival is in the DNA of our theatre and of our city and of the people within it. And this fire in our bellies is what will keep our theatre and arts alive for future generations to benefit. We really do hope for another 45 years beyond this. If you want to see what we're about, experience some of it, and join our community, please check out the website or get in touch. Thanks very much.
Wonderful, thank you so much. We mentioned there the fundraising campaign that's ongoing, and we will drop the link into the chat for that, and would really encourage that if you're able to donate to that campaign, because I think we've just got a flavour there of how important the theatre is for when we do have those difficult, challenging times. One of the things that made it worse was not having that ability to kind of go to the theatre and have that sense of escapism. But whilst I've got you here, we've talked a lot about the challenges, we've talked about how difficult the last couple of years have been, but we're now at a time when we can also get excited. So what are you most excited about? Now you're actually back in the day job, doing what you should have been doing 2 years ago. What are we excited for?
Doing more plays. Directing more plays. What am I excited for? I think for seeing, I'm excited about seeing like what theatre means to people now. I'm really excited about seeing how far we can like push the work in terms of like what we're trying to engage people in, the sort of conversations that we're trying to engage people in. We had quite an extraordinary year last year in lots of ways, and it's felt as if there was like a very loud revolution that was happening, and I guess we're trying to find the ways to keep that revolution going really quietly in the background, I guess, as we start to restart our lives. And so all of the work that we try and program in some way is about inviting our audiences and communities to talk to each other, to talk to us, to look at people in the ways that they maybe haven't ever looked at people before. And I feel like now feels like a really, really, really poignant moment in the history of this city, the theatre of humankind, to really challenge the ways that we perceive one another.
Absolutely, and I think we've spoken a lot recently about, you know, how divisive things like social media can be. You know, how can you have a reasoned debate in, you know, 140 characters or whatever it is as you're kind of going onto Twitter. And coming into the theatre, and we came to see Bloody Hell, which talked about that whole kind of coming out story, coming to see The Mountaintop, which doesn't shy away from like hugely difficult race issues that we know were very much, you know, amplified over the Black Lives Matter movement. How important is theatre in enabling that kind of broader debate and showing different perspectives?
It's really interesting because I think when I joined, when I started working in theatre, it had such a profound effect on me personally that I was like, this is going to change the world. And I won't say that I'm jaded, but I just feel like I know more specifically now that actually what we do is we give people the resources and tools to have conversations that maybe they haven't had before, or resources and tools that help to deepen the conversations that they've had. And I think one of the most incredible things about theatre and any live art is that you get to watch something happening maybe before it's actually happened in real life, and you get to learn from somebody else's experience in order that we don't maybe make, in order that we like consider the choices that we might make as human beings. Or it sort of gives us hindsight or perspective, a way in which we can sort of review the ways in which we might have behaved or interacted with people. And so, yeah, I think that is what we can do and what we want to give to Greater Manchester. But we want Greater Manchester to give it to us too. Like, you know, we say in the local exchange program, it really truly is about an exchange. And one of the things that's been really, really important about the organisation as we've shifted coming out of the pandemic is that we want to be so much more outward looking. We want to be an organisation that is learning in as many ways as it possibly can.
Incredible, and it's such a beautiful partnership there between the community and the theatre, and given that today is literally called Community Exchange, I don't feel like we can end on a better note there, that it is very much about having those conversations with all the different elements of our community. So thanks once again for joining us. If you haven't had a chance to get into the Royal Exchange Theatre yet, please do so. We've seen the play since you've relaunched over the summer, and they have just been incredible. The role of property in place is absolutely critical to having diverse, inclusive communities, and we've heard already from Bruntwood about the incredible range of work that they do, and really excited that a guy that I'd worked with a number of times over the past few years, Chris Roberts, moved over to the Lotus Sanctuary. And from his very first conversations about the work that they do there, you could just feel this excitement of being able to use those skills and those developments to really help some of the most vulnerable people in our society. I'm thrilled that they are also working with PHA Group, who are our PR partners, and that we've got their CEO, Gerpel, to tell us more around what the Lotus Sanctuary does and the difference that it makes in our communities.
So my name is Gerpal Singh Judge, and I'm the CEO and founder of Lotus Sanctuary. And what Lotus Sanctuary is a community interest company that was set up in 2018 by myself with the pure and simple intention of housing vulnerable females. So at the time when we started operating in 2018, we had a specific focus of housing rough sleeping females who were based in the Wolverhampton area, after identifying a massive gap in the provision for females. But alongside that, what we noticed was that homelessness, as a lot of people know naturally, has exploded across the UK since 2010. So currently 300,000 people are statutorily homeless, and of those 3,000 are actually rough sleeping on the street. So we started in 2018 housing rough sleepers, and the model is quite simple. The way we operate is that we will lease a property from a private landlord or a private investor, and subsequently re-let that property to the local authority's clients, so the rough sleepers and the local authority comes in and pays us housing benefit to, in effect, pay the landlord as well as offer ongoing support to those residents. So started operating in 2018 and have subsequently expanded nationwide, and we're currently sitting on 1,100 units of supported accommodation, and we've also branched out from housing rough sleeping females to also housing domestic violence victims with children, and rough sleeping men also. So we're based in Wolverhampton, but as I say, we've seen a massive expansion, and the expansion that we've seen has been born out of two things. It's been born out of the demand, which is there, as we all know, as we all go into our city centres and we see homeless people living in tents and we see sleeping bags. But the expansion's also being born out of COVID-19 and the fact that a lot of private institutional investors were heavily involved in student accommodation and commercial lets. And what we saw was that they pivoted away from those into the residential market, but more importantly with a CSR focused, corporate social responsibility focus. And given that domestic violence and homelessness is quite prevalent in the UK, and at the time, naturally, given COVID-19 and the rise in domestic violence, that was a hot topic at the time. We bittersweetly have capitalized on the fact that a lot of people who were, invested in other areas of real estate have come into the residential market, and we've kind of benefited from the fact that that's happened. So we've managed to, as I say, accelerate our growth to 1,100 units, and as of October 2021, by the end of this year, we're planning to actually have between 2,000 to 2,500 units of accommodation for homeless people. And by the end of 2022, we're actually planning to have 5,000 units of accommodation. And by the end of 2023, we're actually planning to have 10,000 units of accommodation. And those numbers sound big. And in terms of from a management perspective, that is quite large. But compared to my earlier stat of 300,000 statutorily homeless people in the UK, those numbers are nothing. And that's something that we say to ourselves, and that's our kind of motivating factor on a daily basis. It's, although we are having a difference and we are making a difference, are we making a difference on scale? And I think, walking forwards and looking at the issue as a whole, is bricks and mortar the solution to ending homelessness? And an idea that we always play with is, what is the difference between homelessness and houselessness? Offering a bed for a night, or offering, supported accommodation unit for 2 years, isn't the long-term fix to homelessness. I think home is where the heart is, and that's what we all say as individuals. And after I've had a busy day at work, I go home. I don't go to a house. So for us, it's what we try to create for our residents in the way that we support them is that homely family environment that says to a domestic violence victim who suffered trauma, it's okay, and we are here to support you, and we want to see you thrive in an environment that allows you to live as independently as possible and puts you on a pathway to live independently. So I think we have a massive focus on how we support residents and the need for ongoing support to residents. So in terms of the way we support residents, each resident is given a dedicated support worker who offers them 3 hours of support per week on an ongoing basis for up to 2 years, at which point we're hoping that that resident is in a position that they can sustain their own tenancy and move on independently. So a big thing for us is, how do you take a rough sleeper who has lived for 3 or 4 years on the streets, who in a lot of ways has just been purely in survival mode? How do we take that individual to be tenancy ready? And how do we equip them with the skills that I feel like I'm just naturally endowed with, which is paying bills, cooking, budgeting, all of these quite mundane, simple things that I overlook. How do we instill it in a person who's spent 3 or 4 years in a sleeping bag in an alleyway, begging and hoping not to be attacked in the night? And that is a critical issue that we see. And for the growth pattern of a resident, for us, it's seeing people grow from day one, where they've come and they're just grateful to have a roof over their head and to have a warm shower and a bed and a warm place to stay. A month later, how do we say to that person, you've come from that, how do we get you completely and utterly tenancy ready, completely and utterly independent in that very short space of 2 years? So these are some of the challenges that we see as an organization. It's more than just offering someone a house, it's supporting them on an ongoing basis towards independence, and that's a massive thing for us. In terms of the why of what we do, as I've said, it is purely for the simple intention that everyone deserves somewhere to call home, and that is why we do what we do. Moving forwards and how other people can get involved and how you can have an impact on homeless people, it's quite simple. If you've got a property that you need to be let out on a long-term basis for a fixed rental income, get in touch with us, because we can offer you a fixed guaranteed return. But what that means to a domestic violence victim with children or to a rough sleeper is immense, because we're offering them a home with support. In terms of volunteer opportunities, if you want to get more involved with homelessness, or you want to offer some form of assistance, we have volunteer opportunities that alongside the support worker who deals with more practical tenancy related support. We have volunteer opportunities that assist in the more emotional support of a resident, and whether that quite simply is, taking a resident out for a shopping trip, cooking with a resident, etc. That's a massive way that you can get involved. And for a third thing, we're looking for partners. If anyone's involved in these kinds of sectors, whether that's real estate, whether that's housing, whether that's supporting individuals, we're looking to partner with other organisations who can assist us in supporting our residents and acquiring more units of accommodation to hit our target of 10,000 units. That is Lotus Sanctuary in a nutshell, I would like to say, but I could speak about it for years and years. But yeah, thank you.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a nice break and are ready for the final sessions of the day. As some of you may be aware, my business partner Katie is the first ever ambassador of the Greater Manchester's Mayor's Charity. They do incredible work across the region, particularly focused on homelessness, but addressing lots of the issues that we see, and most importantly, giving corporates and a lot of the people within our network the opportunity to give back in a really meaningful, structured way. To tell you more about it, I'm delighted to introduce Katie and Vanessa Howarth from the Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity.
Ilona. So, as you mentioned, I am very proud to be the first ambassador for the Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity. So when we were pulling together the agenda for today, I was super keen to get Vanessa in here to share a bit more about the work and the opportunities for the business community to get involved. So Vanessa and I actually met during lockdown. Of course, a bit of a virtual call to begin with, introduced by the lovely Jane Forbes at PwC, and we just sort of hit it off. Totally got what the charity were hoping to achieve, and it was quite an interesting time. Quite a lot of changes has sort of taken place, really. So I'd be really keen, Vanessa, to hear about kind of where you're up to now, your role, and kind of the changes that you've kind of experienced in the last 12 months.
Okay, well, thanks for having me here. It's really nice to be part of the community that Elevate GM are building. So when we met, I was the sole employee at Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity. I joined in the May of 2020, freelance, just to help with some emergency grant making, because the charity gave out loads and loads of emergency funding to the homelessness sector really quickly. So they needed some extra capacity for that. So that was in the May, and then by the October, the charity were recruiting a team, and I applied and became head of Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity, and I think that's where I met you.
More or less the same time, yeah.
So I inherited this amazing kind of momentum, the charity had formed out of Andy Burnham's campaign and pledges to reduce homelessness across Greater Manchester, and there'd been flurries of public campaigns and football testimonials and pop concerts, and I think by the time I joined there was about £2 million come in and pretty much all gone out as well. So it was a really interesting time because we were riding this big wave of momentum, but what we didn't necessarily have was like a strategy or a clear path for what was next. I think really the charity was sort of born out of crises. So the first one being the levels of street homelessness in 2017.
So visible as well.
It was higher than it had been in a decade in Greater Manchester, and mirrored around the country as well. And a bed every night scheme was born out of that. And Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity's always supported a bed every night, and always will. It's a fundamental thing in the city region now, and it's reduced levels of street homelessness by 52% at the last count. So it's making a phenomenal impact. But it was a humanitarian crisis when a bed every night emerged, and when Andy was elected, it was a real emergency situation. So the charity was swept up in that, and committed to making that a reality. And then COVID came, so there was another crisis. And then there was just a huge demand particularly on the homelessness sector, to completely change the way that they were operating, because social distancing meant hostels couldn't be run in the same way. like PPE was like needed, and they obviously weren't on the list, student top of the list. And even like the way that services were delivered, like mental health support, alcohol, drug support, housing advice, all had to suddenly go online instead of face to face. So the charity then made 4 rounds of emergency funding to the homelessness sector of over £600,000 in 4 months. Which was quite phenomenal, really. But so yeah, 2 huge crises really, and then kind of October, November, December last year, like was a point of reflection and going, okay, what do we do going forward? Like, what is beyond here? And there was all this support, all this momentum, all this sense of like, this is really big. We were classed as a young charity, but because the turnover was over £1 million a year, we were seen by Charity Commission as a large charity. So we were like, we had to make sense of all of that from a governance perspective as well as operationally. So it was a big challenge really when I came into post.
Yeah. A lot to deal with. And it's been quite interesting since we met, and again, how you develop that strategy and what that now looks like. It feels like it's a really powerful kind of move and you know, sort of a slight shift in direction.
Yeah, so we got involved with the Centre for Homelessness Impact. We're like a national think tank around the homelessness issue specifically, and they're interested in evidence and data and where there are gaps and what we know works and what works in other fields perhaps but hasn't necessarily been tried in the homelessness sector. So that was a really key relationship for us that formed around that time, and in the January we did like a full I say an away day, it was all on Zoom obviously, with all the trustees and the CHI team looking at what the charity had done so far, looking at the picture in Greater Manchester, looking at the picture globally, and looking at where we could make a difference going forward. And from that, 3 kind of strands of delivery emerged. So emergency response, which you know is where we came from and what we'll never leave behind. But emergency response is what comes at the end, isn't it? That's what comes when you've hit
the last resort almost
crisis. So we wanted to look at more preventative ways of working. We wanted to look at things that maybe would reduce the number of people who do end up in crisis. So our second strand is around places and spaces, because there's been some really interesting work emerging in Manchester, particularly in Greater Manchester, around modular housing schemes, different ways of thinking about what homelessness accommodation looks like, feels like, what communities of support are built around it. So the charity is now really committed to supporting modular builds and like capital builds, which is really tangible but also really, really needed. So we're currently fundraising towards Embassy Village, which is being built down in Castlefield. That's a kind of community of 40 units there that will support people into employment and housing with all the wraparound kind of nurturing and care that somebody might need on that journey. So emergency response, places and spaces, and then the final strand is targeted prevention, because the moment that somebody becomes homeless is not an isolated incident. There's like a whole journey that people have been on, and probably moments along the way where the right intervention at the right time would have prevented them falling into the homelessness system. And that's where it gets really interesting. The targeted bit there is about like looking at who experiences homelessness, who's at risk, and you know, A Bed Every Night works with people who've ended up having to sleep on the streets, and that's a very visible kind of form of homelessness. And our work with prevention is starting to unpick the people that you might not necessarily think about. So families have just lost tenancies or jobs or work and ended up in bed and breakfasts with, you know, all in one room, temporarily nowhere to cook, nowhere to do homework. Like the impact on children and young people in that situation is huge. AKT, who are a charity who've got a base here in Manchester, were telling us about the numbers of young people that come to Manchester, a great university city, and come out whilst they're here, and then the parents are not tolerant of having LGBTQ plus children. They can't go home. So there's a cohort of young people and young adults in Manchester who came here to study and have nowhere to go back to. There's all kinds of reasons why people become homeless that you might not necessarily think of. Relationship breakdown is a massive one. Women fleeing domestic violence. So all those different kind of pathways require different kinds of intervention at different times, and that's why it's targeted prevention. We're going to look at the detail of that and look at where we can.
And I feel like Manchester's such a collaborative city that then actually having your support linked up with other charities and organisations that are working in those areas rather than everybody trying to do everything all the time. I think that's such a powerful kind of way to work.
Well, I think there's over 200 frontline charities in Greater Manchester working in the homelessness sector, and they're doing incredible work on the front line, and they're all completely, well, they're dealing with a need that is bigger than can be met at the moment. And so there are ways that sector join up. The Greater Manchester Homelessness Action Network is one of them, and we're actually supporting a coordinator post there to help galvanise those charities and enable them to share practice and work more collaboratively, more easily. But also we think that because of the profile of Andy and as our patron and the kind of reach that we as a charity have, we can potentially bring new resource into the system that smaller charities might not be able to access. And then through our grant making, it reaches the front line in a really strategic way. So it's about supporting the ecosystem that's here and that's doing incredible work against a rising tide, really.
Absolutely. And we've heard some, incredible stats. That 52%, I think, is hard to kind of get away with, and I know that's kind of a sort of collaborative effort. But what are the hurdles, what are the barriers, what's really hard, what are you seeing when people are kind of, getting into that bed every night system and potentially like what's behind that, what's going on?
Yeah, I think the by the time somebody ends up rough sleeping, there can be quite a lot of complex things that need unpicking for that individual. So the journey for everybody is really different, and a bed every night is not just a bed, although that's the name. There is support in all the spaces that people are accommodated. There is support to try and help people understand what their barriers might be, what might unlock a kind of change for people. But there are other reasons people end up on the street as well. So Bed Every Night also accommodates people with no recourse to public funds. NRPF, it's like a government term, but essentially what that means is that somebody who's not registered for kind of benefits or state kind of protection, and that might be because they're awaiting an asylum decision, it might be that they have fled a violent situation and they've just not kind of registered and got their papers and things in order. So A Bed Every Night is one of the few schemes nationally that will take people who have no recourse to public funds. And that's been really groundbreaking. That other areas in the country now are starting to kind of take that on board, and that's where the Mayor's charity has been really crucial, because our funding is charitable. It can be used to support people with no recourse, whereas the money that comes in the pot from the police or the local authorities or the combined
doesn't come with restrictions. You're free to do as you need to do.
So there's a lot of potential from charitable funds that mean you can work with different people in different ways. But I think prevention is where we need to be at, because you know by the time somebody is on the street, the system's failed them, hasn't it? There's something wrong with society that happens to people, that you fall through the gaps that many times. And I think that's kind of the general shift, to start to look at unpicking that, and that's bigger. That's about poverty, isn't it? That's about society, that's about huge massive things, but actually that's where we've got to look if we really want to end homelessness.
And I think we've heard from some amazing speakers today about working in the city and that collaboration and that community, as we mentioned. And I think that partnership in Manchester has always been so powerful, of that public-private partnerships and that third sector stuff. And I think, you've got kind of quite a nice platform here to sort of say, like, what would your ask be of the business community? What are the opportunities for people to get involved? And, you know, what do you guys need really, you know, from people in the business community?
Well, one of our key values at Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity is being collaborative, and we mean that. That's not a word on a piece of paper that gets, or a slide. It genuinely, we're collaborative. We don't do anything in isolation. We're a really small team. There's 3 of us. And we rely on the generosity and the willingness of businesses and individuals to engage with us. That's the only way that this work is possible. So we have great relationships with loads of businesses who work with us in different ways. That might be like somebody from Fact 3 in Spoonfields who ran the Manchester Marathon for us this year as an individual, but the company kind of got behind her. It might be GFT, who've just launched in Manchester, who instead of giving goodie bags at their opening party, actually made a donation to the charity so that we can put some tap to donate fundraising infrastructure around the city. It might be a cash donation. Some people write us into tenders and bids as part of their social value, which we love because quite often they are multi-year commitments, and that enables us to plan. And then sometimes I think this is a really interesting space. It's like a kind of a partnership or a meeting of minds. So we've just done some work with a company called Baba and Boo, who are based in Altrincham, and they make reusable nappies. And Eve, who runs that, is a Salford girl, born and bred. Her business, she says, could not exist without doing good in the world. And every time they release a new collection, they have like a charity partner for that. So they just donated 10% of profits from a particular range to the Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity, which has been a really lovely way of working with somebody because we've got to know them. It's happened over time. We've explored the kind of links, I guess, between their cosy collection and that feeling of being at home and having a safe place for your child to sleep, and then what must that feel like to not have that. So Baba and Boo feel that their customer base, their community, have been able to feel like they're doing something as well through their collaboration, and I think that's a really interesting model.
And it's that thing, I think, you know, where we're now spending our money, we want to feel like it's doing more than just kind of lining someone's pockets, and you're looking for those businesses that have those values. And I think the beauty of that as well is that actually you get to know them, you understand the way you're talking about their business now, you can't help but feel kind of bought in because of you know the way they are approaching that, and then you actually might go and spend your cash with them. It's quite an interesting way, and I think it's a really good model for the people to look at. I think we are going to see a video shortly with a bit more information about Barbara and Boo as well, which is lovely. But no, that's been so interesting, Vanessa. I think there's so much to kind of go at and do, and so many opportunities for people to get involved when it's, you know, it feels like a problem that's been so visible for so long, and actually to know that there is this collection of charities across Greater Manchester pulling themselves together, and then you've got some great profile and leverage through you know the mayor and sort of your trustees as well.
We've got an incredible bunch of trustees. In fact, it was Jane Forbes, wasn't it, from PwC who made the link between us.
No, absolutely. And I think you know there's a lot of exciting stuff to come. We can't wait to hear more.
Great,
thank you so much.
Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity believe homelessness has no place here in Greater Manchester, so we raise funds to help support projects that will help people who are experiencing homelessness. Everybody's heard of the Bed Every Night scheme in Manchester, and we've always funded that. We're a big supporter of a Bed Every Night scheme.
So last October we launched Cozy, and it just kind of hit home that there was people in Manchester that were homeless at that time. So being Cozy is such a privilege, and we wanted to use that collection to raise money for the homeless in Manchester. So the Moonlight Nappy is part of our Cozy collection. We're donating 10% of sales of that to Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity, specifically the campaign Bed Every Night.
What worked really well with the Baba and Boo collaboration was just the clear link in the narrative, that idea of mums putting babies to bed at night and then thinking about people who didn't have a safe space to go to sleep in. And when there's a real connection like that, it's just way more powerful, and that's what makes it really special.
I'm such a proud Mancunian. I was brought up in a community in Salford that was really tight. It was full of people who helped people, like my family just would give their last pound to anybody, and That's the community that I grew up in. So when I started a business, it was always going to be that way, that we would do what we could to support our community, especially within Greater Manchester, because Mancunians just have this helping nature. They just want to do everything for anybody else and they put other people first. So yeah, being Mancunian is at the heart of what we do.
We want the maximum amount of money to go to good causes. We don't have a massive team, so we're really dependent on collaborations, which is why we were so delighted to work with Baba and Boo, because a simple product donation makes a massive difference to us, not just in terms of the kind of funds that it raises, but also just highlighting the issue with more people.
It's just a natural part of what our team is. They're always looking for ways to help, and our community is as well. Like, they love being part of a charity donation because they're helping. For a business point of view, it's not only network building, it's community building, because you're standing for something and you're showing your community you stand for something.
The Moonlight Nappy range raised £1,500 for Greater Manchester Mayor's charity, which in the Bed Every Night scheme is 50 nights accommodation. So we're really grateful to Baba and Boo for that contribution. That's huge.
Thanks, Katie and Vanessa. We are absolutely committed to this partnership with the Greater Manchester Mayor's charity, so do keep your eyes peeled for lots of exciting activity that is going to be slotted into the calendar soon. It wouldn't be an Elevate event without making sure that we have all the members of Team Elevate in front of the camera. I'm so proud of how Catherine has worked since joining Elevate just over 6 months ago. Not only for all the work that she does within the business, but for the role that she plays in the wider community. As some of you may know, she volunteers on the Northern Quarter Action Group, and she's joined today by Mike Danborough from Manchester City Council to tell us a bit more about the work that they do.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us today, Mike. Lovely to have you here. Do you mind just introducing yourself quickly, please?
No problem. Thanks for having me. My name is Mike Danborough. I work for Manchester City Council, but it's worth pointing out that I'm not here today to represent the council. I'm not here speaking as a council officer. I'm here speaking as a committee member of the Northern Quarter Action Group, which is a relatively new community group that was set up in the Northern Quarter in late 2019. But I do think it's, I should mention that I work for the council. It's how I was introduced to the group initially, and specifically I work for the City Centre Growth and Infrastructure team. The team does a lot of stuff, wide remit, but part of the work the team does is promoting the city centre as a place to live, a place to come and study, a place to work, encouraging businesses to relocate here and create jobs here. So I do have a professional interest in seeing the city centre grow and prosper, and by extension the Northern Quarter. So that's how I first attended the group. But I've continued attending because I'm a Northern Quarter resident also, and I've lived in the Northern Quarter long before I work for the council. I've lived in the Northern Quarter for about 16 years.
Oh wow!
Now,
I realised it was that long.
Even before that, I was working on Oldham Street back in 2003, which makes me feel very old.
So we've actually known each other for quite a few years now through work, and then when you found out I also lived in the Northern Quarter, that was when you kind of invited me to join the group, which was about 7 months ago-ish?
I think so, yeah, roughly.
So you've introduced the group to us, which was great. Why do you think the council sort of felt the need to set up a group like this in the first place?
Well, the group was formed by the manager of the neighbourhood manager for the council's central neighbourhood team. She's called Ruth Billingham.
Yeah.
That was late 2019. And I think there was a recognition that whilst there was some kind of activity going in the Northern Quarter, there wasn't a kind of well-established formal group set up yet.
Yeah.
There is a strong sense of community in the Northern Quarter amongst the residents, hospitality businesses there, and there's a really thriving community of small creative businesses, I'm sure you know. But there wasn't kind of a formally structured group, as there are in other areas of the city centre. So there's, I think it's called the Village Action Group in the Gay Village, and the Castlefield Forum, which is
they're
really
kind of like a well-established, kind of famous one, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they've been going for over 10 years. And the Northern Quarter, as the city centre is growing massively, so is the Northern Quarter. Huge increase in residents, increasing popularity as a place to visit. So I think there's a recognition that we could do with a group setting up within the Northern Quarter. that could bring the distinct elements together. So it's attended by residents like me and you, there's some local businesses who attend, some of the local ward councillors drop in from time to time, and we've got representatives from the Arts and Crafts Centre, the Buddhist Centre, and some others as well, which I've forgotten.
There are quite a few, there's a lot on there.
Yeah, so the purpose of the group is, from the council's point of view, was to engage with all those different elements within the Northern Quarter to look at solutions, come up with solutions to problems in the Northern Quarter, but not just problems. We don't want it to be kind of a negative group. There's a lot of good stuff happening in the Northern Quarter too. So it's how we can build on those existing strengths, and shout about some of the more positive things that are happening in the area and how we can support that as well.
Yeah, and especially with more and more people coming to live in the city centre, those sort of issues, problems, whatever you want to call them, are just going to come to the forefront more and more. And it's great that there's a group to sort of tackle them now, because it's a positive for the city in the end to have more people in the city centre.
Exactly.
But what would you say are sort of the main goals for the Northern Quarter Action Group, if there's sort of specific ones, and have they changed over time? I mean, it's only been going for, it's just over a year now, is it?
It was formed in late 2019. I wasn't involved then, so I kind of missed out that bit. I think I started attending in spring 2020.
Yeah.
And of course the pandemic. So we've only from then I've only ever attended the meetings over Zoom. And we had our first formal AGM in February this year, where we elected a chair, a treasurer, secretary, and appointed committee members. So yeah, I wasn't there at the start, but to begin with, we commissioned a company called Amity to run some facilitation sessions. I think that spanned a couple of months, and all the different members of the groups attended those to come up with a mission statement and kind of an aims and vision for the group.
Yeah.
But as I say, I wasn't there then, so I'm going to have to consult my notes to come up to read out what came out of those facilitation sessions. So it was making the Northern Quarter a greener place and reducing carbon emissions, conserving the Northern Quarter's unique cultural identity, engaging with the Northern Quarter's communities, and developing resources. So that was setting up that formal governance structure, setting up an AGM, and empowering the group to be able to apply for funding and develop and maintain projects.
Unnecessary for the running of a successful group. So are there any particular projects, anything that you're kind of involved in at the moment that you find particularly interesting or you're really stuck into?
The one I'm personally involved in, so Ruth, who's the chair of the group, she leads on Manchester City Centre's Climate Change Action Plan, and part of that is about resident engagement and encouraging positive behavioural change, encouraging people to increase rates of recycling, choose renewable energy sources, and that kind of thing. But that's quite a large task. There's, the city centre population has grown to about 60,000, I think, at the moment. So I think the thinking behind it is if we kind of attack that by apartment block, that's more achievable. So the idea is that we'll have apartment block climate change champions. Maybe not the best name yet, but it doesn't roll off the tongue, does it? Yeah, but so very much in the same way that an apartment block will have a chair of residents association. There'll be a climate change champion, that's someone who's knowledgeable and passionate about climate change, and they'll act as a point of contact and source of information for other residents who might have questions about how they can reduce their carbon footprint. And they'll also act as kind of a go-between and liaise with the property management company to look at how the apartment block overall can reduce its carbon footprint. So we've had some meetings with a property management company called Urban Bubble. They're very keen to be on board. They've got quite a large portfolio across the city centre. So that's something I'm involved in. It's been hindered a little bit, of course, because of the pandemic. It's been hard to do that engagement over Zoom, but we're looking to trial that in a couple of buildings in the Northern Quarter very soon, and hopefully, if that has some success, we can roll that out, across the Northern Quarter and across the city centre, and really have, kind of strong impact on rates of recycling and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I know we've had discussions already about me potentially being the next one for my apartment block. The recruitment has already begun. But I'd just like to quickly mention while I'm here as well was another project that we're working on. So we have the Northern Quarter Action Group as kind of like the whole, and then we split off sometimes into these little sort of sub-units, as you may want to call it. And I'm currently in one called Invent Makes Sense, which I think we've talked about quite a bit in the main group as well, but it's all about sort of developing a competition for sort of university students, potentially college students, to develop their own sort of air pollution sensor devices that we can hopefully put all over the Northern Quarter to start measuring some of the air pollution levels, and we want to do it kind of quite specifically, different levels of the city and different sort of heights and different pedestrianised, non-pedestrianised areas, just to kind of have that data that we can then use to kind of back up any arguments for, we're trying to close certain roads in the Northern Quarter, or looking into that, and how we can get those pollution levels down in places that, people are excited to live in, and sometimes those pollution levels can just kind of ruin that. So any data that we have around that will help with the sort of environmental side of things, and that's kind of the idea behind Invent Makes Sense. So we will share out details as soon as we've got sort of the competition details in place and everything like that. But loads of ways to get involved with all the different stuff that we're trying to do at the moment in the Northern Quarter Action Group. But sort of realistically speaking, what sort of impact do you think an organisation like the Northern Quarter Action Group can have sort of on the environment or on the local area as a whole?
Yeah, you can. I think, from the Northern Quarter Action Group's point of view, those small impacts about behaviour change, rates of recycling, encouraging people to use renewable energy sources, to bigger changes. We're trying to encourage buildings to install electric vehicle installation points, encourage active travel, car clubs, that kind of thing. But looking at more well-established groups, we mentioned the Castlefield Forum earlier.
Yeah, great
I had
examples for us.
a conversation with the chair of that group recently, and he's actually gone down to 4 days a week in his day job, and is dedicating 1 day a week to the group. They've been asked to be a community partner in a scheme, the Castlefield Viaduct scheme, which you may have seen in the news.
Is that the greening of the High Line? Yeah.
So that's a really kind of exciting project, and I know the Northern Quarters, it's a slightly different area to Castlefield, but there's some huge similarities as well, and there's no reason why we can't emulate the success they've had in Castlefield.
Absolutely, no reason whatsoever. So what does the future look like for the Northern Quarter Action Group, do you think?
Well, from the council's perspective, I think our input was to facilitate the group, get that set up, arrange the meetings, host the AGM, get that structure, kind of get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
But the aim is to kind of withdraw slowly, still be involved and have an input, but hand it over to the members of the group and empower the group. So at the next AGM, I think we're hoping to appoint a new chair. I don't know if you'll be interested in doing that.
Bruce already been asking,
just thought. So we'll be looking to get the community more involved in that group. And then things coming up are the Oak Street and the area in front of the Arts and Crafts Centre. So we're looking at pedestrianising Oak Street. We've got an ambition to pedestrianise Oak Street, to do some hard landscaping and expand that square in front of the Arts and Crafts Centre. It's not very well utilised at the moment, so we're hoping that can become an event space for the community in the Northern Quarter. And there's some plans around Edge Street. There was proposals developed before the pandemic we've got some European funding to add some greenery to the street and sustainable drainage system solutions. But that has been perhaps changed a little bit with the pandemic and the outside tables and chairs. So there's some interesting plans for Edge Street coming up, and see how that changes, which the group will be consulted on and will heavily feed into. And Oak Street, there's things happening in Stevenson Square as well. So a lot coming up.
Yeah, I'm really excited personally about sort of the Oak Street, sort of Edge Street stuff. It's such a nice little area, and it's so underutilised, and it could be made into something fantastic for the community. So we'll keep everyone updated on how we get up to with that as well. But finally, just to end on sort of like an advisory note, what advice would you give to we've discussed that there are other sort of city areas that have their own groups already. What advice would you give to areas that are trying to start their own groups, or particularly interested in sort of doing something like the Northern Quarter Action Group where they live?
Reach out to other groups, existing groups in the area that are already operating.
Yeah, it's worked for you.
Make contact and see what else is going on in the area that you can connect up with and feed into. I would say make contact with your neighbourhood manager, Manchester City Council neighbourhood manager. I think there's about 13 across the city that represent a few different wards. but they can give you advice on how to access funding, introduce you to your local councillor, and introduce you to other groups in the area to see what similar aims they may have. Definitely do some research on strategies in the area, so look at what the council are doing, the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and see what's happening and what's going on, because there might be something that you're passionate about that you can feed into and get involved in. And finally, and most importantly, I'd say perseverance. I think don't let setbacks hinder you. It's a slow process, I think, and just to keep going and not to give up.
Well, thank you for that. Ending on a nice positive note. Thanks, Mike. If you are interested in finding out more about the Northern Quarter Action Group and what we're up to, and then also how to join, if you're interested, if you live in the area, if you've got a business that's in the area, there's information on the website on how to join, so I'll link that sort of in the chat. And yeah, thanks again, Mike, for joining.
Thanks for having me.
No problem.
It actually feels a little strange running an Elevate event of this scale and just not being in the Inside studio. Inside Manchester have been phenomenal supporters of Elevate from day one, and just a really, really great space for events, for meetings and for the hotel. Scott Brown, who I'm going to bring onto stage in a moment, has been one of the busiest men, not just around Manchester, but around Newcastle and Liverpool over the last year, reopening the Manchester Hotel and reopening Newcastle and Liverpool. One of the things that I really love about those hotels is they're not just cookie cutter hotels that set up exactly the same everywhere that they go. They're backed by a global brand, they're part of Melia, but they absolutely embed themselves with local suppliers. And Scott is joined today by Keith from Seven Brothers and Claire from Comsart Art. Comsart Art, right. I'm just going to do the and Scott is joined today.
Yeah, I can just...
And Scott is joined today by Keith from Seven Brothers and Claire from Comsart Art.
Okay, so as already positioned, Melia Hotels global brand here in Manchester with the Inside Hotel, just opened in Liverpool and also opened in Newcastle in May just gone. And a big part of our brand, although a global brand, is to really make sure that we resonate locally. And we think it's really important that we are not a cookie cutter brand with our hotels, and it's not the same in every single city. And a big part of doing that is what we call community. And community looks like a number of different things, from art within the brand, which we can talk to Claire a little bit about in a moment, but as well as art within our brand that has to be local. It can't be the same everywhere around the world. It's also about connecting with local businesses, independents, not necessarily using other sort of chain brands within our supply chain, so whether that's drinks, food and beverage, or other things that we use. So again, it's going to be really great to talk to Keith and Claire about that from the perspective of their businesses. So first of all, Keith from Seven Brothers, a local brewery who I know very well, a little too well. But essentially, we at Inside Manchester, we wanted to have some VIP amenities, gifts that we could give to our VIPs to put into rooms, and some drinks that we could use within our food and beverage as well. And we really wanted to look locally to do that. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about Seven Brothers and about what community means to Seven Brothers.
So we are Seven Brothers Brewery. We're based in Salford, or in Greater Manchester as well. We've been established 7 years now, and as we've grown, as we kind of scale up as well, we've kind of begun to realise that sustainability and the environment should be our biggest priority. I feel that for every new startup, for every business as well, it should be their highest priority also. And for us to be able to engage with other businesses which are at different scales than us as well, much larger and much smaller, it's a privilege, but it's also a responsibility as well, because it all plays a part in terms of reducing your carbon footprint and being sustainable as possible. And we will always welcome collaborations on any level, absolutely. So Yeah, it's
I know one of those, Keith, is, and you mentioned brands, but there's some work you've done with a well-known cereal provider, and going to the sustainability piece, there's a really nice connection there, isn't there?
Yeah, that's right. You know, we, you know, I'll touch on the community as well and what that means to us, as you said previously. But yeah, we've been lucky enough to develop partnerships with some incredible brands. In particular, you mentioned Kellogg's there, who make some amazing cereal.
Is that the bit where you say other cereal brands
are
available?
Yeah, but we deal with these guys, and it came about as many of these things do by chance. You know, we made a particular product, and we made a beer that had cornflakes in it. And long story short, somebody within Kellogg's found out all about this. And they approached us. First we thought we were a little bit of bother because we had cheekily used things that we maybe shouldn't have used on the branding of this particular beer. But it was the opposite. They were really interested to find out what we'd done and whether or not it was something that could be scalable. And it opened our eyes really to the whole issue of sustainability, other issues as well, like food waste. And then as we began to look at it even more, the wider aspect of trying to reduce our carbon footprint across the whole of the business. So they're really important, but it all does stem from community. You have to get in, you have to immerse yourself in the community. Everything that drives everything that Seven Brothers does is generated by community, by getting everybody involved, getting yourself out there. Talking to people, listening to people.
And literally, and the backstory, Seven Brothers, there are actually Seven Brothers.
Yeah.
And I think that community angle that you talk about, and I know this from seeing your business and having had the privilege to walk around your business a little bit, that, all the brothers are involved, all their family members are involved, and that creates a community and the locality within Salford and Greater Manchester is
it does,
really a part of that,
I guess community actually does start. And inclusivity starts within your family unit, and whether or not your family unit is as stupidly large as ours, or it's a smaller family unit, or your friends are your family, it all starts from there and grows from there. And that's exactly what's happening with Seven Brothers. We started off really, really small, and we immersed ourselves in the community, and we welcomed everyone into our own community, and it's just that's how things, we think, improve and get better and grow.
And Claire, so Commissar, part of looks after the gallery inside Manchester, and again that was so important to us. We could have just gone and bought artwork and put it on the wall, and it would have looked nice, but it wouldn't have been, it wouldn't have resonated, it wouldn't have felt local, it wouldn't have had the meaning that we wanted it to have, and the connection that we wanted to have. And again, as a big brand or any business, storytelling is so important. So we want to have a story to tell, and community allows you to tell those stories rather than just, a beer is just a beer, but a beer from Seven Brothers with the family and with the history and with the provenance means something, and the same for us in what we were talking about with art. So from your point of view, a little bit about Commissar and how you connect with community, and did anything Keith say there about I suppose family?
It's just reminded me actually, a few years ago, I think when I first met you, you were doing a beer with Fanny Goff.
Yeah, that's
and
right,
she's Sean Elizabeth, that's currently in the inside
Isn't
on
that,
walls.
There you go.
Yeah,
Very
and that's
cyclical,
how
I
we
like
met.
that.
So yeah, Commissar's been around since 1994. So I set it up when I graduated from
when
university.
You were 3, when you were just 3.
Yes, thank you. Cleanse, tone, moisturise every day. Always take makeup off before you go to bed. Yes, so I set it up with a girl who just graduated from a fine art degree. And a few years later, the bomb went off in Manchester, and the whole of the city changed. So all of a sudden, you saw this cafe bar culture come into the city centre, that before that, you basically came into the city to work and you went home. And we had a friend that opened a bar off Oxford Road. He allowed us to put Alison's graduate exhibition up, and from that we got loads of calls from local artists saying, is this an exhibition space, and can we show with you? Because you have institutions where there's like a 3-4 year waiting list to get an exhibition of the work, so that's how it's set up. we always work with artists that have a connection to Manchester. That's really important. So it's whether you come from here, you live here, you studied here, and that's what works so well in the inside, because you're giving local artists a really good space to show, and it will reach people that wouldn't necessarily come and walk into like a private gallery and stuff. So even though we do have a Comstar private gallery, it works really well with the hotel having like a public, almost 24-hour access space to art.
Yeah, like a window in, I suppose.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we do. Back in the day, I think we had like 23 venues around the city centre. So that was everything from, we did all the show apartments at number 1 Deansgate when that was built. We did a hotel, and you know what, this is so bad because it was so long ago, but the hotel at the top of Piccadilly Gardens, it's like one of the main hotels. I can't remember the name of it. Maybe it's the Piccadilly Hotel. Yeah. And we did exhibitions there, cafe, bars, restaurants, everything. And now we've kind of condensed it down, because the artists that I've worked with have kind of built their career over the years. They want to either show in the Comstar gallery or show in a space like Inside, rather than a little sandwich shop, which we used to do. So it's kind of good that our artists' careers have built up as Comstar has got the reputation. I think it's also really important that Tom Hetherington, if you're watching this, because he is one of my mates, he does the big Manchester Art Fair that used to be known as the Buy Art Fair, which is great. But what I like about Comstar is we show what is going on in the artist community, like 52 weeks of the year. It's like the artwork in Manchester is always out there in front of people. And what I do, and again, what I love about the Inside is how good you are on the social media as a brand, which means that people that I don't have access to are actually finding out more about the artists and the work that we're doing through your social media team. So I do really appreciate that.
No, of course, and that's one of Inside's kind of our pillars. You know, we have these 4 pillars of values. We flow, we're social. These are kind of ways that we deliver service, I suppose. But then we have to be unexpected and to be a trend seeker. And the trend seeker element is that we want our teams to know what's going on in the city, be a part of the city, not just be an order taker as such when they're delivering service. And you know, we give the small examples of that, right? If somebody says to us, we're going to head out and we want to go out for a coffee, we're probably not going to send them to the Starbucks around the corner. Starbucks is fine, but we're probably going to send them to Mancoco, which is under the arches, really cool little independent sort of coffee scene, so they're getting that local vibe. And I think that's back to why we then have these connections, because we could give people cans of Heineken in their rooms and a nice drink that way, right? But it's not the local story, it's not having that sense of community. So, there are some types of collaborations where, from an art perspective, and we have these in our other hotels where we do the same sort of thing with local galleries. We don't look to take commissions, or we don't look to kind of almost even monetize some of those collaborations. In Liverpool, for instance, we've just partnered with a florist called A Slower Space, who have a little place on Penny Lane, and they're doing that out of our lobby, which is cool. And again, it's more about the community, it's about the collaboration, it's about creating something unique and an experience, rather than necessarily just providing a flat service, if that makes sense.
It then works both ways, doesn't it? You touched on, we have the privilege of exhibiting. You're exhibiting, the walls, we're exhibiting in the fridges. It's still the same thing, isn't it? And it does work both ways. We have then that platform from a national, because there are going to be people coming from all over the country and international visiting your hotel, your places, inside places, and it works as well. So we're then going to regenerate that social content. We're quite lucky. We have quite a prolific marketing department that can get loads and loads of content out there. So it kind of works both ways, doesn't it? Especially from a local level, because that's what people do want when they come to the city that they're spending time in. They want to find out a bit more about it. They really do. Places they can visit, things they can go and see. So we see it just as a perfect partnership.
Good. Well, if you were to sort of wrap us up, I suppose, if you were going to give us, putting you on the spot a little bit, but if you were going to give us maybe an example of where community has really benefited either of your businesses, and whether that be that's not financially a great deal, or whether it be something that just really enriched, where would you say that community helped you to do that? And from us, my examples are right here. Mine are easy, right? My examples are right here because the relationships that we have had, whether through working together in the past, whether through knowing each other personally, whatever that's community that we created has then gone on to enrich what we do in business now, and that enriches is what I do now, representing Inside.
I'll start from our point of view. It is twofold. We're a growing company, and we have the luxury of employing more and more people. We want as many of those people to be from our direct community. So from directly on our doorstep, we can affect the prosperity to a certain extent of the public. From a commercial point of view, having established a reputation over the last 7 years, which has just grown through the little micro communities to the wider community, it's enabled us to flourish commercially. We may not have been had the opportunity to go and open up another premises on Media City, for instance. We may not have had that, or we may not have been entertained further afield when we're looking at our next place in Liverpool, which is under construction now. So community and collaboration certainly help. So that's what community is meant to us.
I think from my point of view, it's a community that I can give a platform to artists in venues like the Inside. I know over the years the city centre has grown and grown and grown, so artists would have been based in old mills that have now been converted into apartments, so they are being pushed out of the city centre. So to still have that presence and keep that community vibe going with them all, I think that's really, really important.
Absolutely. Great stuff. Well, it's been lovely to speak with you both in this way today. Thanks to Elevate for giving us this platform, and we'll see you soon.
What a wonderful example of bringing the community together. And if you haven't yet had a chance to visit Inside, I would absolutely recommend getting down to the Manchester Hotel. And if you find yourself in Liverpool or Newcastle, then absolutely recommend visiting them there as well. Our final speaker of the day is bringing us right back to the very basics of what makes communities work, and that is people. It's about looking after ourselves, it's about focusing on well-being to make sure that we're in a position to be able to support each other. I'm delighted to welcome Deepa from Thinking Deeper.
So welcome everybody. I'm doing a talk on well-being, wellness. I don't know what that means to people. It's quite a strange word, and actually I wanted to start by asking you what wellness actually meant to you. If someone said to you, do you feel well, what does that actually mean? And I think it's an interesting question, because the word has been around for a very long time. It's a modern word now, but actually it has ancient roots. And this stems back to the 1960s, 1970s, when a couple of really cool US physicians decided, do you know what, we're going to start looking at conventional medicine and look at self-healing and preventative measures. So they went about doing some research to see what people would start to feel outside of just taking tablets, and start to look at more preventative stuff. So the definition is quite interesting, really. It's the complete well-being of your body, mind and spirit. It's a wholesome concept, and it's one that's not a passive state. So you're not actually going to look at just feeling that type of way that one day. For me, it's more of an active pursuit. It's about looking at how you make certain decisions, what actions you take, what intentions you have to start to be in a more rounded, optimal health and feeling more well. So that's kind of where I feel the wellness aspect comes in. Where did we get to that? How did we get to that? Where did those ideologies come from? For me, that's where community comes in. And the true definition of community is sharing a collective of morals, values, belonging and togetherness. And this is when we start to look at, well, okay, if community says all of that, where did that come from? Where did it start? Ancestors started the sense of community. They started values, they started morals, they started belief systems. My grandma was one of the most superstitious women I ever met in my life, and I lived with her, and everything was, don't do this because this will happen. Don't do that because that will happen. And you start to create all these doubts and fears for no reason. We then went to school, we went to college, into the education system, and the same thing happens. People start to tell you what you should and shouldn't do. This would make you feel better, this will make you well. And it starts to take away the idea of what our intuition is telling us. You then go on into your friends, your family circles, social circles, society generally, and you start to realise it's happening everywhere. How often will you keep believing what other people are going to tell you? So we've been going through that rigmarole for God knows how long, and then all of a sudden, COVID hits. And this is not a buzzword, this really did happen. And where we would have spent a lot more time on our phones, distraction, with people, out partying, socialising, we now didn't have all of those things. We didn't have community anymore. Not really, not in the same physical aspect. We had ourselves. We had times, because we complain about not having time all the time, and then all of a sudden, the universe said, here you go, I'm going to give you lots of time. What are you going to do with it? And a lot of people at that point either struggled because dynamics changed, work changed, how you were in your household changed, parents became teachers, kids became parents, your whole work aspect changed. For me, a lot of things changed. When your change in circumstance happens, you have to start thinking about what you're doing. So I took that time personally to start looking at what would I do if I was going to be in this situation. And I'd always said I wanted to start looking at being well, but proactively being well, not getting to a point where I was going to get ill and therefore have to find some form of reactive measure. So being well meant starting to look into different concepts, different aspects, different therapies, different remedies, and to look at things that weren't necessarily conventional. And when I started to do that, I found that the World Wide Web was very confusing. It was very contradictory. You didn't really know enough on anything to make a conscious decision. And really, I didn't want to do anything massive. I just wanted to look at my diet. I wanted to look at my exercise regime. I wanted to look at just being a little bit more conscious of the decisions I was making every single day of my life. And so I decided I'm going to set up my own platform. I'm going to call it Thinking Deeper. It's not a vanity thing. I just thought it was a good name at the time. And the idea was to start to provide a platform where people could start to get some of that information and build my own community, actually. I wanted to build my own network of people that were in similar situations to me, and people that were also out there trying to help other communities. So the people that were my tribe were people that were on the same journey as me. They wanted to start to make more conscious decisions, start to learn about new things. And the therapists, the nutritionists, the people that were out on the road trying to do this, trying to create messages basically for people to become better versions of themselves. That was my kind of personal quest. And this is what Thinking Deeper became all about. It was about trying to talk to different therapists, to look at natural remedies, to hopefully empower people in their homes so that parents don't start panicking every time the child's got a cough and then they feel guilty because they're going to ring 111 and there's going to be some kind of pressure on the NHS. So natural therapists will tell you, well, cut up an onion, put it in some honey, leave it overnight and give that to your child and see what happens. Because actually all of those natural remedies existed, and they exist in your cupboard anyway, in your kitchen. So it was starting to look at things outside of the box that hopefully helped them feel like they weren't going to panic, and they were starting to make some conscious decisions, and they were looking at the whys and the wherefores of how these things actually work. That continued on. I started to do more research. I'm not an expert, so this was the big thing, But what I was very good at was building my network and actually finding the right people who would then talk to my people and hopefully give them the information that they need. And the conclusions we drew from it really were that it's a multi-dimensional concept, well-being. You've got to have a lot of different things. And if I was to use the analogy of a car, there are certain aspects of the car you've got, it doesn't matter, there's an engine, there's an exhaust, you've got to fuel it all the time. So those normal things that we're looking at, you have to look at every single day. You have to fuel your body, you have to move it, you have to feed it the happy hormones so that you can start to feel differently and not just be about waking up every day and doing the same routine, changing things up. Feed your mind, don't stop learning just because you're not at school anymore, or you've finished uni, or you've graduated, or you've done your PhD. Keep learning something new because that feeds your brain and that allows you to function optimally. Nutrition and diet, big one. Start reading labels. Like, don't just think this is the right thing. We've been through years of being fed low fat is great, sugar free is great, but actually when you really look into the depths of it, none of those things are good for you. And so these are the case studies that the therapists and the nutritionists will run you through. They'll do myth busting with you, they'll do knowledge bombs with you so that you can see they're not just saying it because they want to say it, they're saying it because these things are actual facts. They based it on experience and real people. Hydration is key. We all know 80% of our body is water, so we need to do that. It's great for our digestion, it's great for brain function. Again, it's not me saying it, I'm just giving you a roundup of what the experts are telling us that we need to start to adopt in terms of a lifestyle. And probably one of the most important things that we don't do, which is sleep. We spend a third of our life doing it, but we don't actually do it as well as we should. But to think that you think you've slept all night, you wake up in the morning, you're still tired, and you think that's the norm. And actually it's not the norm. You need to consider changing up things in your lifestyle for you to be able to start sleeping better, and so that you feel reset and you feel recharged and recalibrated. Once we do the fuel bit, the maintenance takes place. You can upgrade to a Lamborghini, but you've got to get these bits right first. So the idea is to start looking at alternative approaches, alternative methods. Let's start looking at more remedial stuff. Let's start looking at preventative stuff, herb-based stuff. Start having conversations so that people can see that these things are not woo-woo, they're not for me. You know, you can consider them because they're actually normal things. Like I've said, they're either in your cupboard at home, or you can look into them, and actually a lot of people are doing them now. Social communities is a big one. So we've lost the sense of community. We're now building the communities back. Festivals, events, start to create yourself a network of people that are like-minded, and that might not be what it was before COVID to what it is now. So start looking at how that might change for you. We're actually working on a festival at the moment for next year that'll be music and wellness, and it's about connection. It's about finding that connection back with yourself, back with people that you couldn't be with, back with loved ones that you couldn't spend your time with, and back with strangers actually, you know, because we've stopped doing that as well because we're so scared of everything all the time. Paranoia's kicked in. Mental and emotional is probably the big one. We hear mental health thrown about all the time, and actually it's bigger than that. It's what you feel about yourself. How much time do you spend on yourself? Do you spend time journaling? Do you spend time meditating? Do you do any breath work? And all those things are quite important. And the conclusion that I drew overall was that actually, whilst we've had COVID, we've lost community, but the gap between our actual workplace and our home has really drawn in. It's gone. And so what we actually need to do now is we need to start looking at how we go and transition into a more work-home situation where we have got wellness into the workplace, wellness into the corporate world, wellness so that it's a part of you going to work, but you might have a gong session at lunchtime and you feel really cool and calm, and all of a sudden your brain's functioning at a different level and you're like, I don't know what I did. If we look at some of the statistics here, you'll see the global corporate wellness market is now reaching over 66 billion. That's what they're predicting for 2022. That's going to be even bigger. But the most important part of it is the well-designed wellness programs that we're looking at give you a return of investment from 1.5 to 3 times what you put in. So what we are drawing as a conclusion here is that we need to start building an interest of communities within our businesses that actually start to look at wellness and incorporate it. The investment in the teams is around wellness, because this is what will help strengthen the immune system. If you look at it overall as a business person, if you start investing in your employee, the perceived value is, wow, my boss really cares about me. But overall, they're actually in a happier place, so they're functioning better, so they're giving you 100% back into the business, which ultimately helps your business thrive to the levels it needs to. And there's lots of other things like digital wellness apps that are out there anyway, so the measurement of it, we're not just saying that this is something you ought to do because we're telling you, we're saying there are ways in which you can measure this and the success of it, and that's why you should do it. So I just wanted to give you an example of one that we are looking at right now with some corporate businesses that people can actually use themselves, and it is like a breathwork masterclass. So all the different aspects are here in terms of what it helps with, brain enhancing, anti-aging. It helps you in terms of establishing healthy sleep cycles. Some of these sessions are actually built around what you would do in your day-to-day life. So if you were based at a desk all day, then what breath work should you incorporate at that point halfway through the day to give you an energy boost? What kind of breath work should you do to help your digestion if it's just before lunchtime? What breath work could you do if you're feeling slightly anxious because you've got a presentation to complete and you haven't actually done it yet? So it's just looking at practical, really daily, routine things that we can put into a day-to-day lifestyle for our employees to help build this new community of people that feel empowered, but they feel well and they feel whole, and ultimately they are becoming best versions of themselves. So this was just an example, and I feel at that point we start to build an even stronger community where people start to understand themselves more rather than feeling lost in this big wide world. And I think that's what the important thing now is. Now we've been through a process of COVID, we need to start thinking about how we can rebuild. So thank you for listening, and thank you to Elevate for allowing me the opportunity and the stage to do it.
Thank you ever so much. It's really interesting hearing that, because I think there are so many echoes of Elevate's story there, of kind of being plunged into this kind of enforced quiet time, you know, very similar lives pre-pandemic, that we were out and about, we were networking, and yeah, that thing of, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have a bit of downtime, and then suddenly that was all you had. And as we've tried to rebuild, kind of coming out of that, to make sure that we're not going back in to some of those more negative practices. It's not about presenteeism, it's about having that real focus on wellness. But that's kind of been easier for us because we're a startup, because we're new, we can just rebuild however we want to. If we've got those larger corporates listening and they've kind of got pre-pandemic world, pandemic world, and then this kind of bit of an unknown, what are maybe the kind of top couple of things that you'd say, just think about this as you're bringing people back into the offices?
Well, I think the main thing is people need to consider people's mental health. And I know we throw that word about a lot, but genuinely speaking, a lot of people have spent a lot of time with themselves that they've never done before because they've not had a choice. So it's been forced upon them, and that affects them in a very different way to you choosing to be in that space. So I think allowing people the flexibility, a lot of people have found a way in which they're adaptable, so they actually prefer working at home. A lot of people are like, I just could not do it at home, I need to go into the office. So I think flexibility is going to be a really big one on the agenda. And I think just for employers to understand that wellness really is, it's a 360 aspect, and it really will help them. So they need to consider what they're doing in their day-to-day. Is there fruit around the offices? Is there a water machine? Those are just simple things, because those visual concepts that they're going to implement, that will empower the employees, and that'll make them think that, you know, they're doing some good things here for us. But at the same time, I think if you can go one step further and start to look at allowing them access to holistic therapies or alternative remedies, it might not be anything yoga related that people might think is woo-woo. It might be a workshop on how to make your own smoothies, but they're very specific to work. So, you know, what you would have in the morning to give you the energy, what you would have at lunchtime possibly to just give you that little bit of a boost or to fill you up, what you'd have in late afternoon so that you're not in that kind of lull stage, and what you would do kind of nighttime, you know, to wind down, because just as much as people are coming back to work, they're also stressing that they've got to catch up. You know, a lot of people haven't been monitored whilst they've been at home, and now they're in that environment where they've got eyeballs. So, you know, there's lots of dynamics here that, you know, employers will need to consider. But I think ultimately doing something that is a little bit more holistic, I think will help them.
Brilliant. Yeah, such a great tip there. Is now we have really blended those lines between kind of home and work. Yeah. We don't need to go back to how it was before. So looking at the big picture, and you mentioned your presentation there that was really interesting, that you can do all of this stuff for absolutely the right reasons, but it also makes absolute good business sense. And hopefully that's something that everyone's got from the themes that have run through today, that, you know, business can and should be a force for good, and ultimately businesses are all about people. So thank you so much for that. That's our final speaker of the day, and has hopefully left you with some really great tips. What an amazing afternoon we've had. So many interesting speakers, different organisations, and just to reiterate what we said at the start, we are so grateful to everybody today for giving up their time for free to come and share all of that expertise and knowledge. We're really passionate at Elevate that all of this information is accessible as possible, and their time and support, and also the support of Bruntwood Works for Space, enables us to get this out to you free of charge. So I really hope you've enjoyed everything that you've heard. Please do comment in the chat box, let us know your thoughts, let us know what more you'd like support on, and we look forward to seeing you out and about at events again soon.